editor is Tara McDermott.
That was The Inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I am Marcy Marcusa. That is my name. And the name of the show is Information Radio. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube this morning. Thanks so much for joining us and our team here at the program. We're on air with you until 8:37. Get you plugged into your day. It's -7 in Winnipeg. That's, I think, pretty close to the exact same temperature we started with yesterday. So we'll see what the weather's going to bring today. Who is here? Corey Funk is here. Corey, good morning. Corey directs the program and we'll be on air covering the commute. Good morning to Abby Adeyemi, who's also on the other side of the glass. Abby's our technical producer, and we'll be covering the forecasts on air. And Kevin Ipatebo, going to give you a wave on YouTube. Kevin is our YouTube producer for the morning show. Heather Wells is here also. She's over in our news center, and she starts her day with headlines. Good morning.
Morning. Well, Manitoba businesses that export goods to the United States are trying to figure out how they'll be affected by Donald Trump's proposed 25% tariffs on Canadian imports. According to the Manitoba Bureau of Statistics, this province exported $15.5 billion worth of products to the U.S. last year. The biggest export, medications, $2.3 billion worth in 2023. An expert in online sex predators wants governments to do more to protect children. This after a 20-year-old Steinbach man was charged with 2 counts of luring a child. Tyson Vandenbosch was arrested for communicating online with minors for a sexual purpose. We'll hear more about that and other news from Manitoba coming up at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Just to touch the weather briefly here, Brandon does have a fog advisory, so just mention that. The fog should dissipate this morning. The high in Brandon -10. Man, you were cold yesterday in western Manitoba. City of Winnipeg today, 30% chance of flurries, some fog patches as well possible, and a high of -6. With wind chill, it'll feel more like -16. So today is very similar to yesterday's forecast for the cities. In our program today, holiday shopping is coming to the RBC Convention Centre. Local shopping, local makers. We're going to get a preview of a big show coming up this weekend, the city's Christmas market. Plus, we're going to talk tariffs as well. First of all, we'll hear from some livestock farmers in the province in more detail in the first hour of the show. They say Trump's threat to tariff Canadian goods would be catastrophic for business. So we'll hear more about that. Stay with us. World Report's next.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
Have you noticed that when it comes to what people are wearing, the 90s are kind of back? Wide-leg jeans, plaid shirts, long hair. The designer Anna Sui is one of the most important fashion figures of the 90s. She has a lot of thoughts on why that time is back. She'll be here to tell you about it. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdelmahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. For Canada's government, responding to Donald Trump's 25% tariff threat is an all-hands-on-deck effort. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will meet virtually with the premiers today. Let's bring in Janice McGregor from our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, the premiers have asked for First Ministers' meetings on a number of issues in the past, but this request was granted immediately. What is going on?
Marcia, in their letter to the Prime Minister, premiers said they agree that there needs to be a Team Canada approach to dealing with the Trump administration. But they needed clarity about how Justin Trudeau plans to work with them on North American trade negotiations and who among his cabinet ministers would lead this file. A less than subtle dig at his leadership, perhaps. During last night's emergency debate, it was Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland listing off all the meetings she's had this month with business leaders and concluding,
"This is Team Canada."
Now, premiers, too, have representatives in Washington. They lobby key American players. As chair of the Premiers' Council, I asked Ontario Premier Doug Ford's office whether provinces are looking for more power now, whether they actually want a seat at the table with the Americans, like provinces had during the trade talks with the European Union. Ford's spokesperson didn't define what the premiers mean when they call for a Team Canada approach, but they will at least have a chance to be heard directly at today's meeting. Last night, opposition leader Pierre Poilievre was dismissive of the Trudeau government's focus on the process of convening all of these meetings instead of laying out a tangible plan to counter Donald Trump.
Now we learn that since the threat happened, he's come up with exactly one response: a Zoom call.
So they're all putting on Team Canada jerseys. How important is it to be delivering the same message?
Quite. A senior government source told CBC News that some of what's been said recently hasn't been helpful, like Alberta Premier Danielle Smith agreeing with Trump that there are issues at the border, just as Canada desperately needs to prove there aren't. And while Trudeau was making a diplomatic push to save NAFTA in his talks with the new Mexican president at the G20, for example, premiers were saying they've reached a consensus on negotiating only bilaterally with the U.S. in the future, barge pulling away from Canada's three-way agreement. Probably not helpful to have Team Canada skating in different directions on this.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. More than 2/3 of seafood processed in Newfoundland and Labrador is exported to the United States. Those processors say newly proposed tariffs on Canadian products will gut the industry. The CBC's Heather Gillis has that story.
And I think everybody here is a little bit in shock.
Paul Grant is the chair of the Association of Seafood Producers, a consortium of about 24 processing companies in Newfoundland and Labrador. They ship 67% of their products south to the U.S. With Donald Trump's threat of a 25% tariff on Canadian goods looming, Grant is crunching the numbers. An extra $100,000 in duty on a tractor-trailer worth of snow crab sections. $300,000 more for lobster tails. Costs, he says, can't fully be passed on to consumers.
I'm still trying to grapple with this. You can't simply just lay people off, reduce wages, reduce the cost of raw material. It's not as simple as that.
Finding another market also isn't easy. Grant says a weak yen is hurting their next major buyer, Japan.
There's crab that was originally destined for Japan, the Japanese market, was sent there. It's now being redirected back to the U.S. So
Premier Andrew Furey calls the proposed tariffs catastrophic.
So it doesn't take an economist, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that a 25% change in the price point will be incredibly devastating to the industry.
As for fish harvesters, Grant says processors will need to know more before they negotiate collective agreements with the union and set prices for next season's catches. Heather Gillis, CBC News, Toronto.
A ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah is now in effect, and world leaders are welcoming the development. Here's Australia's Foreign Minister, Penny Wong.
We hope that this is a catalyst for a broader ceasefire in the region, and we look forward to the day when there is a ceasefire too in Gaza.
People living near the border are starting to return home, but there are warnings it may not yet be safe. The CBC's Tom Perry is in northern Israel this morning.
I'm in a town called Kiryat Shmona. It's in the very northern part of Israel, really right on the border with Lebanon. I was just talking to a woman a short while ago. She's just returned to her home. This town has been evacuated. It's really still a bit of a ghost town. She'd come back with her kids, said her kids hadn't been there in a year. In the time that we were talking, we heard an artillery shell. Since then, I've heard 2 more. So this is all very tentative on this side of the border. By and large, though, this does seem to be holding. Now, we've seen scenes on the Lebanese side of the border of cars rushing back to the south of Lebanon, people trying to get back to their homes. Here, it's more tentative. Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, has been trying to assure people that if there is any breach of the ceasefire by Hezbollah, that Israel retains the right to strike back. Tom Perry, CBC News, Kiryat Shmona, Israel.
People are sweeping the streets around their businesses in Islamabad. Pakistan's capital is littered with burned out vehicles and broken glass. Protesters made their way past police barricades yesterday. The supporters of former Prime Minister Imran Khan were prepared to hold a sit-in to demand his release from prison. But overnight, security forces arrested hundreds of demonstrators. Others went home after Khan's PTI party announced a temporary suspension of the protests. Supporters of the former prime minister say his imprisonment is politically motivated. Australia has passed a bill that would ban social media for anyone under the age of 16. It would be the first law of its kind anywhere in the world. The Senate now needs to finalize the bill. It would make social media platforms like TikTok, Facebook, and X liable for failure to prevent young children from holding accounts. Fines would be in the tens of millions of dollars. If the law passes, the platforms would have 1 year to work out how to implement age restrictions. Voters in Nova Scotia have handed the Progressive Conservatives an overwhelming majority. Premier Tim Houston called the snap election last month, and in the end, his government won their second straight majority by a landslide. The CBC's Kayla Hounsell has more from New Glasgow.
Premier Tim Houston arrives at Progressive Conservative Party headquarters in Pictou County, now poised to form what's called a supermajority in Nova Scotia, when a party wins 2/3 of the seats in the House of Assembly, meaning he won't require the cooperation of the opposition parties to change the procedural rules of the House. He's also the first Nova Scotia Premier in 40 years to grow a majority government.
So much is possible for this province, and I promise you, I will do everything I can to make it happen for this province, make it happen for you and for your family. I will give you everything I have.
Political observers say Houston called the election last month because he wanted it to happen while Justin Trudeau is still Prime Minister, successfully capitalizing, they say, on the unpopularity of the federal Liberals.
Our incredibly effective opposition has grown, and we are now the official opposition.
NDP leader Claudia Chender has pulled her party out of third place to form the official opposition. And for the Liberals, extraordinary disappointment. Leader Zach Churchill.
And the people of Nova Scotia have certainly decided who they want to lead this province. And we respect the voters' decisions and accept with humility in our hearts and with peace in our hearts what they've decided.
The Liberals haven't been this weak in the Nova Scotia legislature since 1963. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, New Glasgow, Nova Scotia.
After 50 days lost in the backwoods of BC, a hiker has been found alive. 20-year-old Sam Benestick went on a camping trip near Fort St. John back in October. He didn't come home. Search and rescue teams and police dogs went out to find him. The search went on for weeks. It was called off eventually. Snow started to fall. Mike Reed is the general manager of the Buffalo Inn where Benestick's family was staying during the search. He says the hiker was finally found by workers grading the roads near a natural gas well.
They just said they grabbed the sticks from him and he almost fell to the ground. That's how weak he was. He had cut his sleeping bag and wrapped it around his legs and his feet. So he knew how to survive.
Benestick is now recovering at the Fort Nelson Hospital where he will be reunited with his parents. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, hey there, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. It is Wednesday morning, and thanks for joining us on CBC's Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Let's get into what's coming up on the program this hour. We're going to be talking more about trade, not a big surprise. Donald Trump threatening to introduce that 25% tariff on Canadian goods in office. We're going to hear from some Manitoba business owners. We're going to hear how the tariff will impact specifically pig farmers in our province, livestock farmers. Also, a political science professor is going to give us some more analysis of how this is looking across Canada this morning. Plus, do you have exams coming up? We're just looking at the dates for U of M, U of W, U Brandon, and in a couple of weeks, students are going to be testing their skills. How should you prepare if you want to avoid cramming for that final exam at 4 a.m.? We'll get some healthy study techniques that work for students in 2024. And we're going to hear about the Christmas market, by the way. The RBC Convention Center is having their big Christmas market. So we're going to tee it up this morning as well in the first hour. Right now, though, Heather Wells is here to talk about other stories and things that are developing in our news center. Hi to you.
Hi, good morning. Well, an expert in online sex predators wants governments to do more to protect children. This after a 20-year-old Steinbach man was charged with 2 counts of luring a child. We'll hear more about that case. And the Union for Winnipeg Transit Drivers wants more community safety officers on buses. They made that demand yesterday in a rally outside City Hall. Violent incidents have dropped since the community safety team made its debut earlier this year, but the union says there aren't enough of them to cover the entire system. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, let's get into the weather forecast here. Feels very similar to yesterday's forecast, except maybe a little bit of fog issues. Abby, Adiyemi, how you doing this morning?
Good morning. More like similar conditions to yesterday with some, variations in the regions. Let's start off with this fog advisory we have for southwestern Manitoba. This morning, we're seeing reports of dense fog, which will be creating zero to near zero visibility in that region, which would include Brandon and the surrounding area. So if you're traveling, just expect to be cautious on the road, okay? This will be lifting this morning, but if visibility is reduced, please try to slow down and watch out for tail lights of vehicles in front of you. If we come back to Winnipeg and the Red River Valley region, we're going to be seeing more like mainly cloudy conditions. In Winnipeg right now, -7. We saw some light snow falling earlier in some parts of the city. Today we should see mainly cloudy conditions, slight chance of flurries in the forecast, some fog patches also noticed here and there in the city, which should be clearing up. It will stay calm for most of the day with some light winds, and we only get to a high of -6. For tonight, cloudy conditions will continue with light snow starting around the midnight period. I'm talking about Westman again. We have that fog and snow in store for that region. We're going to see highs near -10. The South Central region will see more of like overcast today. The Parkland region will see light snow developing, and for the Interlake region, we should see more like cloudy conditions. For further north for the Power and Flame Flow, we're looking at light snow also beginning around the noon period. And then for Churchill and Thompson, we will see more of light snow today. So compared to other regions, Winnipeg will generally be, colder. It's Winnipeg. It's colder in the north when we look at Thompson and Churchill.
Mm-hmm.
But Winnipeg, we'll just see like slight warmer temperatures.
Yeah, we're same as yesterday.
Yep.
Almost identical. Mm-hmm. All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, the drive, walk, roll, commute. What's up?
I'll in the city, nothing major to commute right now. To tell you about right now. But I will tell you that poor visibility we're hearing about those fog issues, particularly in the Western Manitoba, seem to extend, from the Brandon area all the way up to Russell. So if you are hitting the highways this morning in Western Manitoba, there's a decent chance you'll run into poor visibility. So just heads up there. Other than that, if you see anything else going on, highways are looking okay. I mean, it is still snowy outside, so just heads up. But if you see anything else, though, 204-788-3093.
Well, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Shopping, at least. 28 days, people. That's where we're at this morning. If you're looking to get a head start on the local shopping season or you want to get in the holiday mood, the RBC Convention Center is where you want to be. That's where my next guest is standing this morning. The Winnipeg Christmas Market starts tomorrow. It's going to feature 125 artists and pop-ups this year, plus food and entertainment. Monica Dirksen is show manager, and as I mentioned, she's at RBC Convention Center via Zoom. Hi there.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
I love your background. Can you describe what's behind you and then what you're looking at, too, as you guys are getting set up there?
Yeah, well, right now I'm kind of sitting in the workshop area. We have, like you said, a bunch of vendors, artisans, food, beverage. We also have a workshop component, so you can learn how to build your own wreath or decorate cookies or various other things. So I'm kind of sitting in the workshop area right now.
It looks lovely. I can see that sort of, red and black buffalo check plaid behind you, and lovely little benches and trees, of course. Tell me what it's like to find vendors for this kind of a show now in Winnipeg, given that really our maker market is really strong.
It really is. And we have a lot of local Winnipeg and Manitoba artists and vendors here. We also have across Canada. So they're all handmade, small businesses that make or produce their own products. So it's really unique gifts. And, with the Canada Post strike now, you may want to just come pick it up instead of waiting for something to get mailed to you. But it's a really good opportunity for artists and small businesses to showcase what they're up to.
In terms of, you said there's things to do in terms of making things. Obviously, people be shopping. What else is going on? You've got entertainment, I mentioned.
Yeah, we've got local musicians playing all weekend. So we have a little stage here where you can come and watch. We have lots of light installations, great selfie opportunities. We have a kids area. Santa will make an appearance every day. And we've got some great local food and beverage options in the patio area. So it's really a full experience. It's not just shopping, although obviously there is a lot of that. There's a lot of things to participate in as well.
How important is it to consider shopping local?
I mean, I think we all went through this in the last several years of if you want local businesses and local artists to stay, in business, it's very important to support them. And I think this is a great way to showcase how much talent there is, how much value they add to our economy and society. And we just love taking the opportunity to highlight so many of them in one space.
You mentioned Santa's going to be there. How can kids get a photo taken? Do they just show up or do they have to register somewhere?
No, they can just show up, and he's here every afternoon. So between sort of 2 and 5 o'clock every day, Thursday to Sunday, they can come, stop by, have a seat on his lap, and we even have a little area where they can write letters to Santa and give them to him directly.
In terms of the workshops as well, you mentioned wreath making. What other workshops do you have lined up?
We have wreath making, we have candle decorating. You can come learn about how to make a nice bone broth. There's also mocktail making options. And then we also have an area where you can pour your own candle. So you choose all the scents, the top, mid, and base scent, and you get to pour it yourself and even make your own label. So it's very participatory. We wanted people to have something to engage in while they're here. So lots of really great options. You can make your own gifts even, or something for yourself, obviously.
You said with 125 vendors, it's going to be hard to answer this question, but can you highlight a couple of them and their products?
I mean, we have a local Métis artist, and she started during COVID doing prints and sketches of inspired by the Northern Lights. So very beautiful artwork and options. We have another artist who does stained glass, and so she does lampshades. She does little giftwares like jewelry boxes and things like that. We've got some who do more kid-related stuff, so making Snuggies and plush toys and things like that. So wide variety. They're all available on our website, so take a look there if you want to pre-shop at all. But yeah, lots of variety.
In terms of coming down, do people need tickets, or what should they expect in terms of when to arrive, or will there be lineups, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, you can pre-buy your tickets. Obviously, they are a discounted rate until today. So they're 25% off if you order today. You can also buy on site or, during the weekend, anytime online. So you do need a ticket to get in, but it's quite affordable. Full price is $15. And then we have discounts for youth and seniors as well, and some family packs. So if you're coming with multiple people and want to do a joint package, we have that option. As far as lineups, we're expecting it pretty distributed, so I don't think there'll be a ton of lineups at any point because we are open so many hours. So if you prefer coming in the morning, and skipping a little bit of the rush, or mid-afternoon, or even an after-work cocktail on Friday, you can come anytime. There's a lot of hours to choose from.
How much cultural diversity are you seeing in terms of the makers that are coming forward, just given that, often the crafts and the makers reflect, our community, and our community's changed so much and grown so much?
Yeah, there is a lot of diversity, and not just in the products, but in the artists themselves. It's a lot of these artists have been doing work for 30 plus years, and so it's a really high quality options that you've got. And like I said, a lot of Manitoba artists, but there's also Canada-wide as well. So if you're looking for, something that you might not have seen before, this might be the opportunity to try that out.
And last, why are you there so early? How busy are you going to be today with this setup?
Yeah, I mean, we were here all day yesterday already getting, food trucks in place and a lot of the day decor, but there's always a lot of work. All the vendors are coming in this morning to get set up. So it will be a busy day, but it's all very exciting.
Enjoy it, Monica. Thank you very much for making time for CBC.
Thanks for having me.
That's Monica Dirksen. She's been is live right now at the Convention Center, and she's talking about the RBC, at the RBC Convention Center. We've been talking about the Winnipeg Christmas market. So it starts tomorrow. It runs through Sunday. You can check it out. One of the artists, actually, that's going to be playing, one of the entertainers, we have music this morning from the J.D. Edwards Band. Here they are with Go On Home.
promised to me. Yes, it was promised to me. Yeah, mother, won't you help me? No love I can find, no, no. He don't make good father, Spirit, yes, and mine. But he says, son, you gotta come on home. Gotta come on home. Oh, you gotta
Gone Home, J.D. Edwards Band, just giving you a taste to lure you to the Winnipeg Christmas market. They're going to be one of the groups playing. It is 6:23 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 9:90 a.m. on the app and YouTube. We're here with our team at the show. The show is Information Radio on CBC. Thanks for being with us. -7, light snow falling in Winnipeg and a fog advisory this morning in Brandon. Let's talk about something that's happening the week after next. Exam period begins. U of M, U of W, Brandon University. Students, if you go there, you likely know, because maybe you're already thinking about how to prepare, or maybe you're nervous. A lot of us remember pulling those all-nighters to get that essay done or cramming in a last-minute study session for the big exam. For high school and university students, as mentioned, those experiences are mere weeks away, but maybe you can plan ahead. Joining us to talk now about how to head into the exam season feeling relaxed and prepared is Rochelle Thibodeau. She's coordinator of a student support program at Carleton University, where she teaches a course called How to Be a University Student. She's also a learning strategist with Awakened Learning, which is an education consultancy that coaches people on learning strategies. And I should mention, I said she's with us now, but pardon me, because I just spoke with her at 6.
Good morning.
How did I do describing the how students might be feeling and doing right now?
Oh, I think you're bang on there, Marcia. Students definitely feel the stress of the exam period and often don't feel great about how well prepared they are, feel like they should have started earlier. And sometimes they feel like they're the only ones feeling this way. So the first tip is to know that it's completely normal to feel anxious and stressed about exam period.
What are the typical study habits that you see?
I think a lot of students rely on, I would call it passive learning. So sort of repetitive strategies like rereading notes and rewriting notes. And those make the material feel more familiar, but they also produce illusions of knowledge. So as the material feels familiar, it's easier each time you reread it. And that feels like you know, and you'll be able to produce the answer on the exam. But unfortunately, exams don't test how you feel. They test your ability to recall the information.
So if you're trying to recall it, how would you study in a different way so that you really absorb what you're trying to, what you're trying to come up with when you're sitting in that stressful exam room?
It's all about testing yourself the same way that your teacher or your professor will do. So if you know you're going to be writing an essay exam, test yourself with some essay exam questions, practice those ahead of time, or multiple choice or short answer or problem solving. Whatever it's going to be that you have to do on the exam, try to do that yourself before the exam.
Where can someone find materials? Like someone might be saying, I don't even know how I would practice a test.
Yeah, there's so many resources available. The best resource is your own class notes. So if you've been diligent about going to class and taking notes from class, you have a pretty good idea of the material, and then you can practice making some test questions from your notes. Check with a friend in the class, or even check with your teacher or professor to see if you're on the right track. Not to ask them, hey, is this going to be on the exam, but do I have the right idea about the types of questions you might ask? Textbooks can be a great resource for study questions. And today's students can also ask AI, ChatGPT, that sort of thing, to make exam questions. But again, that has to be done in a really informed way where you know the types of questions that the teacher or the professor will be asking you.
Has anything shifted in this? Because obviously stress was always part of exams, cramming, studying. But I wonder, when knowledge is at your fingertips in a way where you can look things up, is the idea of, as you started with, memorizing something seen as knowledge versus kind of taking that extra step to really understanding something and even knowing your own learning, not just abilities, but retention habits? Like, I'm wondering whether or not how to study is being taught enough.
don't know. I don't know that teachers and professors have necessarily a lot of expertise in how to study. They're great at how to teach in the classroom, but when it comes to what students are doing at home in study time, they might not be, everyone might not be an expert in that. And I think you're right that material being available somewhere can sort of deceive us into thinking that we don't need to study. But if you're going to have an exam where you have to recall things from memory, that's what you need to do when you're studying.
Beyond studying, then, how should students also, in your view, be taking care of themselves, in order to have the best exam experience?
Yeah, it's so important. As we started out talking about stress, and I think one thing to know from the get-go is that test anxiety is completely normal. A lot of students feel like, oh, I have test anxiety, that's going to impede my performance. But we know from the research that it's completely normal to feel all of those physiological reactions to anxiety, sweating and messed up stomach and headaches. All of those things happen to most students. And it's okay. You can actually get through that and still perform really well on a test. It's just your body gearing up for a big challenge. But we want to obviously minimize anxiety as much as we can in the kinds of study that we do. So spacing out the studying so that we still have time for sleep and breaks and connecting with friends and family and healthy meals, that's all really, really important. So if you've determined you're going to study, say, for 10 hours, just to pluck a number out of the sky, then it's much better to spread that 10 hours over 5 or 10 days than it is to cram it into a couple of days.
And just last, when do you let go? I mean, and this might be individually different, but some people do you study right up until you're leaving the door to go to your exam? Do you put it down the night before and say, no, tomorrow I'm getting up and what I know is, what I've crammed into my head and I'm going in?
Yeah, that's ideal. If you've prepared well and you've prepared ahead of time, then yes, I would say stop studying the night before, have a good sleep, and then avoid all of those really, really stressed out people who've been up all night in the hallway before your exam because some of their anxiety might leak onto you. If you are in that situation where you've unfortunately let things go until the last minute and you're cramming, then I would say yes, it's okay to keep reviewing until just an hour or two before the exam, and then try to take some deep breaths, have a little walk, and enter into the situation as calmly as you can.
Thank you very much for this. Appreciate it. I'm sure students do as well.
You're welcome, Marcy. Take care.
Rachel Thibodeau, coordinator of a student support program at Carleton University. She teaches a course called How to Be a University Student. So University of Winnipeg, 9th to the 21st of December, exams. U of M exams are 10th to the 20th of December, and at Brandon University, December 9th to December 18th. Those dates are coming up quick. Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:31, it is -7, a lot like yesterday. Going to be mostly cloudy, a chance of flurries, but colder tomorrow. So -6 is our high for today. Manitoba pork producers fear their industry is going to effectively stop selling to the U.S. if Donald Trump goes ahead with his plan to slap 25% tariffs on all Canadian imports. This province exported $439 million worth of pork and live pigs to the United States in 2023. That makes the U.S. Manitoba pork's largest export market. Cam Dahl, who speaks for pork producers, says the tariffs would make Manitoba pork uncompetitive south of the border.
My assessment is that U.S. retailers couldn't afford to put Canadian pork onto their shelves, and the same thing with U.S. farmers that couldn't afford to buy Canadian pigs to finish. It would essentially close that market.
Other major Manitoba exports to the U.S. last year included medication, canola, electricity, frozen vegetables, oil and gas, and agricultural equipment. Now, southern Manitoba grain farmer Landon Friesen sends a lot of his product to the U.S.
We're hauling wheat down into North Dakota here. We have about 150 loads to make. We're about 20 loads into our winter hauling.
And while Trump's proposed tariffs have sent some into a tizzy, Friesen says he is optimistic as long as cool heads prevail. Well, Canada's premiers have an emergency meeting scheduled for this afternoon with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The virtual call will deal exclusively with Donald Trump's threat to impose across-the-board tariffs on Canadian products. Trudeau is asking for what he calls a united Team Canada response. Meanwhile, in an emergency House of Commons debate last night, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre accused the Trudeau Liberals of being unprepared for the second Trump presidency. The pitfalls of social media are back in the spotlight after a Steinbach man was arrested for communicating online with minors for a sexual purpose. 20-year-old Tyson Vandenbosch has been charged with 2 counts of luring a child. RCMP investigators say they have also located several victims they have not yet been able to identify. Stephen Sauer at cybertip.ca says this is a grim reminder of the many sexually exploitive incidents that happen to young people on social media.
It's happened in the last few years. 74% of the incidents that are sextortion related connect to either Snapchat or Instagram. So those are 2 major social media platforms that do not put enough in the way of protections for youth on their platform.
RCMP have released the Snapchat avatar used by Vandenbosch. You can see that on our website this morning. The Union for Winnipeg Transit Drivers wants more community safety officers on buses. They made the demand in front of a rally in front of City Hall yesterday. Violent incidents have dropped since the community safety team made its debut earlier this year, but the union says there aren't enough of them to cover the entire system. Safety team leader Bob Christmas says he's been getting positive feedback from drivers and passengers.
Just trying to take the resources we have and make the best impact we can. You know, a big part of the work they do is being present. As you can see, they're highly visible. These are some of my officers are with me here.
Public Works Committee Chair Janice Luke says she and the mayor agree the safety team is working, but the city can't add more members without getting more funding. Manitoba's progressive Conservatives are raising concerns about bed shortages at Winnipeg's largest hospital and the impact it could have on surgeries. A memo from Shared Health Management to surgeons at the Health Sciences Centre yesterday points out there's no bed capacity and surgical slates are being cancelled. The memo also warns surgical discharges need to be optimized. PC Health critic Kathleen Cook says the memo would impact the health system as a whole.
These are surgeries that in many cases people have been waiting some length of time for, surgeries to alleviate debilitating pain that takes people out of the workforce and out of their everyday lives.
Now, Shared Health doesn't deny the memo's existence. However, it does deny any surgical beds at the Health Sciences Centre have been closed. To Lebanon. Car horns blaring as many displaced Lebanese return home today as a ceasefire agreement between Hezbollah and Israel kicks in. The deal brokered by the U.S. and France is in effect. The Lebanese army will take control of its own territory over the course of the next 60 days. Israel will gradually withdraw its troops, and civilians will return home on both sides of the border. Israel retains the right to self-defense if this deal is broken. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. New York City is now requiring some residents place their trash into garbage bins for pickup. Earlier this month, people living in homes with less than 10 units were required to use a trash bin with a secure lid. The mandate was the next phase in efforts to bring New York in line with what most major cities all over the world have been doing for decades. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
How strange.
I know.
For a city that seems like it would be, progressive, it's enormous, and how strange.
Yeah, suddenly we're the progressive ones.
Right? All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's going on and progressing in the weather. Abby Adiami's here.
Good morning once again. It's a cold and cloudy start across the province. We're looking at this fog advisory in effect for parts of southwestern Manitoba. That includes Brandon and the surrounding areas. Now we have dense fog, which is creating near zero visibility this morning. Though this fog should lift later this morning, however, drivers should remain cautious and try to drive according to the condition of the road if your visibility reduces. Let's now come to Winnipeg and the Red River Valley region. Currently, Winnipeg, we are at -7. We saw some light snow earlier. We should expect more like cloudy conditions today. There's a slight chance of flurries still in the forecast. Some fog patches noticed here and there that should clear up, and then the condition will remain calm with light winds. A high for today in the city would reach 6, and then tonight cloudy conditions will continue with light snow starting around midnight. Heading west to Brandon, it's currently where we have that fog advisory in effect. It's currently -14 with light snow and that dense fog in play. That should clear this morning, and then you see some cloudy conditions, but the light snow will continue with you most afternoon for the Westman region. We'll see highs around -10. In the northern area and south central region, we're looking at temperatures around -9. Overcast condition we're seeing right now, it would be more like a slight chance of flurries in the forecast. Some regions seeing fog here and there. We get to see a high of -7 today, though that foggy condition will be clearing this morning. Down in Dauphin, we're looking at temperatures around -15, and we're seeing light snow. Now for the Parkland region, it's going to be more like a cloudy weather, which will continue into most part of the day, and we will spot periods of light snow beginning around noon. Some fog patches you noticed this morning, that should clear up, and we will see highs around -10. Moving into the Interlake region, we currently Gimli is at -7 with cloudy conditions. The region will experience mainly cloudy conditions with a slight chance of a flurries in the forecast. Some fog patches also noticed here and there that should lift this morning, and we'll see light winds that will stay with you for most of the morning. Highs would only be around -5. And in the Pan Flin Flon, currently temperatures around -12 there with light snow and fog patches clearing this morning, high around -10. Moving north to Thompson and Churchill, for the region, we're looking at temperatures around -9 in Thompson with light snow and -11 in Churchill with cloudy conditions. Highs for that region, we'll see highs hover around -9. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at -7.
All right, thanks a lot, Abby.
Thank you.
Let's get into what's going on in the commute. Corey.
Really, that fog is causing visibility issues in Western Manitoba, as we just heard from Abby, all the way kind of from Ninette up to Russell. So Western Manitoba, if you hit the highways this morning, really just be super careful. Southwestern Manitoba, particularly Eastern Manitoba, particularly Highway 1 from just after, I guess, St. Anne to, well, all the way to the Ontario border. Poor conditions as well there. That's being reported as covered on Highway 1, so look out there. If you see anything else going on the highways here in the city, no major issues yet, give me a call, 204-788-3093. Just
before we turn to business, let's talk about where we're going to be tomorrow. Are you going to help me find my old locker?
I would love to. That'd be funny. Is it still like got like a bunch of like fun pictures on the side of it of like, I don't know, Corey Hart or something like that? I don't know.
No, that was past. It was later than Corey Hart. It was 1996.
Okay.
1994 to 96 when I went to Red River College, Notre Dame campus, which looks nothing like it did back then. And that's why we're there once again, because Communities in Focus is there. And we, for the last 2 weeks, actually, we've had producers and reporters that have been setting up office hours. Corey was live there last week with Radio Noon. Communities in Focus, of course, looks at different communities, and well, we just set up shop and we listen and we share stories, and we'll be doing that. This is the Notre Dame campus of Red River College, so not the downtown portion, but Information Radio is live there tomorrow, so
it's going to be fun. I know we've even got some live music coming on from someone who actually works at
fun.
Red River College, so I think it's be a good time.
Part of the focus is looking at students, but also looking at, not all of the students are in Gen Z, but a lot of them are of that age category. So what are the issues that matter to students today? So we're going to look at that. We also have a special focus on the trades for Information Radio live tomorrow. So we're going to have a tour through the big building that's only been open probably for about 6 years, the Skilled Trades and Technology Center there, just an amazing space. So that's all coming up tomorrow live at Red River College, Polytech. So I keep saying college. Sorry, that's old school. Red River.
RC Polytech.
Yeah, RC Polytech. I got to change my language. Tomorrow, though, if you want to be with us, I just want to invite you down. And if you're a student or you're going to be there with a coffee, we'd love to have you either on air, come talk to us live, or maybe you just want to come with a coffee, watch the show. We're going to be right on the Notre Dame campus, as mentioned, in the library hallway. This is mall level. That's where we're all going to be set up there for the show. So maybe you'll be there and have a story to share. We certainly hope we see you. Right now, with business news to share, let's turn our attention to Crystalie Ramlakan, who's joining us again. Hello there.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So once again, we're talking about the threat of tariffs this morning and how this is evolving, the 25% tariffs on products from Canada and Mexico. What are we understanding this morning about more reaction and how it could affect Canadian business?
Well, the loonie, it actually fell to its lowest level since May of 2020. So the threat added a further drag on the dollar, which has been moving lower against the U.S. dollar since September. So at one point, it dipped below 71 cents U.S., but it has recovered a little bit. And economists say that the markets were responding to an increased risk on the trade front. Now, the loonie has already been feeling pressure from a softer Canadian economy and interest rate cuts by the Bank of Canada as, concerns have shifted from the need to cool inflation to the need for a stronger economy. But some investors do not expect Trump to follow through with the tariff. Economists see the dollar as poised for a modest reversal once traders assess the situation from a more nuanced perspective. And while a weaker loonie raises the costs, of course, as we know, for Canadians looking to do things such as cross-border shopping, which, of course, very popular there in Winnipeg, especially with Black Friday this week. Barry Schwartz, who is a Bay Street investor, says there is actually an upside for some Canadian businesses.
It's good to have a low Canadian dollar. That's not a bad thing for companies that export goods. It means our stuff is cheaper to buy. It's not good for the regular who goes to the grocery store and we import most of our food and the prices will go up. But for our manufacturers and our oil and gas companies, a low Canadian dollar is actually good news.
So any tariffs that may happen could include carve-outs, though, for specific industries such as oil and gas and the auto sector, which, sees parts go back and forth across the border before their final assembly in a vehicle.
We're going to have more analysis coming up. Pork producers, people have been hearing in the news this morning as well. In the next hour, some local retailers are going to weigh in from Manitoba. Let's stay on the subject, though. How are Canadian consumers feeling after not just this, but after the U.S. election?
We talked a little bit about that yesterday, and I also, wanted to talk about something different today. So Disney, we're talking a lot about, what people are getting paid and how people are being treated at work. So Disney has agreed to pay a $43 million settlement, and, that's to settle a lawsuit that accused the company of paying female employees less than their male counterparts in similar roles for nearly a decade. So the lawsuit was filed by a woman who claims 6 men were who had the same job title as her earned substantially more than her, including one man with several years less experience who was earning $20,000 a year more than she did. So about 9,000 women, both former and current employees, joined the lawsuit. And as part of the settlement, Disney now has to hire a labor economist to analyze pay equity among full-time, non-union California employees below the vice president level for 3 years and then fix those differences. Now, the plaintiffs say Disney paid female employees less when they started at the company because their pay was lower at previous companies, which Disney did not account for, that pay inequity that was happening at other places. Now, Disney disputes these allegations, though, and has not admitted fault. Here's CC Powell, who is a principal consultant of Clear HR Consulting, for more on this.
In BC, they just enacted pay transparency legislation to try to address the issue, to at least get employers to start looking at their numbers so that it's not this unconscious, we're just going to pay what that person asked for. And it just so happens that someone who's a bit more of an aggressive negotiator asks for more and we pay that. This pay transparency legislation in BC is to start getting employers to think about what are they paying with, and is there a disparity? And I think you still see statistically that women in general are still paid less than men.
But Disney says a 2022 review of its pay policies revealed that women earned 99.4% of what men earned. It says the case shouldn't be classified as a class action because pay is determined by hundreds of managers across several divisions at the sprawling company. And that settlement agreement still requires approval by a judge. And Marcy, my last story here, if you guys have time still, is about Walmart. Do you have time for that still?
Absolutely. This is about Walmart ending some of its diversity programs, right?
Yes. So, it's just the latest big company to shift gears under pressure from a conservative activist. So the retailer will wind down the Center for Racial Equity, which is a nonprofit that was funded with more than $100 million in 2020 for 5 years. And it's also going to wind back programs that provide assistance to suppliers that are more than half owned by women, minorities, veterans, or members of the LGBTQ plus community. So Walmart typically tries to stay neutral to appeal to a spectrum of shoppers and workers. But Walmart now says it will phase out the term diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, in company documents, as well as stop sharing data on its LGBTQ corporate policies with the Human Rights Campaign, an organization that has become a target of conservative activists. So here's Meryl Africa, who is a business consultant and advocate.
There's a lot of the same sentiment of anti-wokeness that's happening here. And I think people are taking inflation and the economy as a reason to sort of push back on some of these initiatives that, if we're being honest, had a very positive impact for many people in this economy.
Now, anti-DEI activist Robbie Starbuck posted a video on X this week taking credit for Walmart ending some of its diversity efforts. And Starbuck has successfully nudged other companies, including Ford and Deere, to back away from diversity efforts.
How are markets looking, Crystalie?
In Europe, markets are subdued as investors continue to assess the potential impact of President-elect Donald Trump's plans to hike tariffs. So Germany is down, the UK is up, France is down. In Asia, markets are mixed. Japan is down, Shanghai is up, Hong Kong is up. Oil is up 22 cents to $68.99 US per barrel. Gold is up 15.61 to $2,648.76 US per ounce. And the dollar's just slightly up 0.01 of a cent to 71.2 cents US.
You are a radio rock star. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Marcy.
That's Crystalie Ramlich, and she joins us daily here with our business news. It is -7 in Winnipeg. There's light snow falling, and our high today is only going to be around -6. So we won't change much from where we're at this morning. But winds are calm. Winds are northwest at just 14 right now. Well, let's continue to hear a bit of what we heard in the news. We have a bit more detail on what Manitoba livestock farmers are saying. They're anxiously awaiting Donald Trump's first day in office because of the threat on tariffs, 25% tariff. Cam Dahl is the general manager at Pork Manitoba. He says for pork farmers, the news is especially unwelcome. He says every year, Manitoba farmers produce around 8 million pigs. 3 million of those export to the States. CBC's Bartley Kivas spoke with Dahl to learn more about how tariffs could impact business.
So the U.S. is when you consider both pork and live animals, is by far our largest markets. Our two largest markets for pork are Japan and the United States. And then when you add in those 3 million plus pigs that go down into the U.S. live, it is by far our largest market. And so when you consider that we're exporting 90% of our product, and all of a sudden we hear something like a 25% tariff that would essentially take that market away. It's extremely concerning to say the least.
So 25% tariff would take the market away completely. It would effectively end exports.
That's my assessment is that U.S. retailers couldn't afford to put Canadian pork onto their shelves. And the same thing with U.S. farmers that couldn't afford to buy Canadian pigs to finish. It would essentially close that market.
Let's say this actually happens. Let's say this isn't a threat. Let's say 25% tariffs are announced. What does day one of the tariff regime look like for a Manitoba company that is reliant on this
Right.
income stream?
Well, I think day one is now. Given how devastating this would be on Manitoba, and not just for hogs, I think I heard a clip from Premier Canoe indicating that this would cause a almost instant recession in Manitoba, and I 100% agree with him. I think the response to this needs to happen now, and we need to be working with the incoming administration, of course, but also with senators and representatives, and our partners in trade in state governments like Iowa and Minnesota and others that rely on this integrated North American market, and we need to be showing why this integrated Canada-U.S. trade is in the strategic interest of both countries. It's in the strategic interest of Canada, but it's also in the strategic interest of the United States. And we need to be able to demonstrate how our integrated Canada and U.S. market in food and agriculture is helping mitigate food inflation. And so to show how that restricting the border and reducing trade is actually going to reduce the returns for farmers and increase the price for consumers, again, on both sides of the border. And this needs to be, this outreach needs to happen from industry, from the provincial government, from the federal government. We really do need a strategic initiative between now and January 21st to demonstrate why this is not in the strategic interest of either country. The pork sector in this province employs 22,000 people in every city and town. Whether it's bacon in Winnipeg or the plants in Brandon and Neepawa and Winkler and people on farm. It's 22,000 Manitobans and $2.3 billion to our GDP annually. It's a big deal, and how do you mitigate that impact of losing our largest market?
Cam Dahl,
Barley, I don't know the answer to that.
Cam Dahl is in conversation with Bartley Kivas there, GM at Pork Manitoba. He mentioned there that a coordinated effort's needed, strategy is needed. He also mentioned Premier Wab Kinew, who did say if the tariffs come into effect, it could send our province into a recession. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, meantime, is meeting virtually with the premiers today to discuss a preemptive response. And just to touch on that for a couple of minutes, Laura Stevenson's here to talk to us, professor and chair of political science at Western University. So what does the Prime Minister and the Premiers, what will they cover in this meeting?
Oh, I think it's going to be quite a lot. I mean, I think as you just heard from your previous guest, I mean, no one's going to be thinking that this is not concerning. There are going to be quite a lot of impact should such a tariff come into play, and it will hit each province a little bit differently, but it's not going to have no effect. And so it's very, very serious. And I think the Prime Minister obviously is well aware of this. And beyond that, I think the Prime Minister has also the benefit, I guess, of experience, right? Because they've done this in the past. They have mobilized for a trade negotiation with Trump in the past, and they're familiar with some of the ways that he does business. So I think what you're going to see is that all these premiers coming together, and you're going to have varying degrees of not panic, but, deep concern, I guess, and urgency. And then you're going to have a prime minister who says, okay, here's what we've been thinking of doing, because I know we've heard lots of reports that they've already been planning. Here's how it worked last time. Here's what we would like to do. And I think there's going to be some back and forth, different views, different ways of approaching things. And I think in the end, though, they will come out with some kind of a statement to try and quell a bit of fears right now, because there's a lot of panic when we think about what might this mean. I think in the end, this is not going to come to fruition, just given kind of Trump's style and what we've seen in the past. But at the same time, right, it is something that we have to be really seriously taking into account.
It's not the past, though. I think that's the thing that everyone's trying to grapple with right now, right? So you can look at what happened, when he was previously president. However, he has more power now. He also has 4 years under his belt understanding things in terms of a little bit of the differences between, negotiating for business versus negotiating politically. But his style hasn't changed. So when you look at sort of how this is going to progress, how might it compare to the past in terms of, what is different here?
Sure. And I think that's actually a really, really great point, because I do think that Trump has been emboldened significantly this time around. And I do believe that he is behaving somewhat differently, maybe a little more dramatically or with greater shows of strength. But what hasn't changed is the way that Canadians and Americans are integrated. And so while the leader of the country might change, I think the situation on the ground with respect to industry across the borders, especially the northern states, right, I think that remains the same. And so the integration of our two countries hasn't changed. And so even if Trump's feeling, more emboldened and stronger this time around, the fact of the matter is that Americans would also be hurt and affected by such changes. And that, I think, is the point that we have to be kind of focusing on right now.
Laura, thank you very much to adding to our coverage this half hour. Appreciate it.
No problem.
That is Laura Stevenson, professor of political science at Western University. To Heather now with our headlines.
Good morning. Well, the Union for Winnipeg Transit Drivers wants more community safety officers on buses. They made the demand yesterday in a rally outside City Hall. Violent incidents have dropped since the community safety team made its debut earlier this year, but the union says there aren't enough of them to cover the entire system. We're going to hear from the Public Works Committee Chair, Janice Lukes, coming up. As well, an expert in online sex predators wants governments to do more to protect children after a 20-year-old Steinbach man was charged with 2 counts of luring a child. More Manitoba news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
The Drive is so far cooperating. Call us, if not, 788-3093 on anything on your commute, whether you're walking, biking, or driving. In Winnipeg, light snow falling, -7. A fog advisory around Brandon. Now, this could seriously hamper visibility, so you may have challenges. If you want to call us, please do. In Winnipeg, the high today, by the way, -6. And in Brandon, you're looking for about -10. And in Winnipeg, we're going to have a few flurries with us. Let's get to what's coming up in the next hour of Information Radio. Premier Canoe, as you heard, said Trump's trade tariffs could send Manitoba into a recession, but a local business owner says the proposed tariff isn't all doom and gloom in his view, so we're going to get that perspective. Also, we're going to hear from one of Santa's helpers who's working to spread cheer to seniors in Winnipeg. And as you heard yesterday on the show, some are calling for Winnipeg police officers to wear body cams. Some RCMP officers are now wearing body cams. We're going to have also a different perspective on that. We are going to hear from someone who's been studying body cams and their effectiveness, so stay tuned.
Today on The Current.
A little bit south of Saskatoon. We have an exciting program today in front of a live audience in Saskatoon. Live music from Jeffrey Straker, a chat with authors Jan Martel and Alice Kuipers, 2 comedians, and the brand new mayor of Saskatoon in front of a live audience. Special edition of The Current in Saskatoon.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Canada's premiers are preparing to meet later today with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Concerns about the new administration moving into the White House and Donald Trump's tariff threat will be up for discussion. South of the border, many Americans are talking about how the proposal of 25% on all Canadian and Mexican goods will affect their own bottom lines. Not only is this raising concerns about an impending trade war, but many economists warn consumers in the U.S. will likely be hit the hardest. The CBC's Richard Madden joins me now from Washington. And Richard, what are you hearing this morning?
Yeah, we're hearing a lot of concern from big retailers like Walmart to small family-owned shops across the country, warning that American consumers may end up paying the price for Donald Trump's proposed tariffs. We heard from a hardware store owner in New York who imports her electronics from China, cleaning supplies from Mexico, and everyday tools from Canada. Debbie Kavuria says her customers could soon see sticker shock.
Our prices would go up. We would be paying more for every object that came from China, Mexico, Canada. Therefore, we'd have to put that on to the customer.
Now, here in D.C., the owner of a pet store warns she'll have to pass along tariffs slapped on dog food from Canada and pet toys from Mexico and China.
There's a point at which the consumer is going to say, this isn't in my family's budget. We can't do this.
Now, it's worth noting Google searches for "what is a tariff" reportedly spiked Monday night after Trump threatened 25% tariffs on all imports from Canada and Mexico, another 10% from China, citing the fentanyl trade and illegal immigration. Now, Trump believes this tactic will pressure companies to open up manufacturing plants in the U.S. to avoid the tariffs, but many trade experts say if it happens, it could take several years to set up shop.
So trade is top of mind, and Trump has also named his new trade representative. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, expect to hear a lot more of the name Jameson Greer. Now, Greer was the chief of staff to Trump's former trade representative, Bob Lighthizer, who stick-handled those contentious NAFTA rounds during his first presidency. So Greer knows the file and will soon be the face of the White House tariff agenda and will be part of the team to implement it.
Thanks, Richard.
Thanks.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington.
حقا إنه يوم جديد تطوى فيه مرحلة من أقصى مراحل المعاناة.
Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati says today is a new day, one that concludes a difficult stage of suffering in Lebanon. The ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah took effect at 4 a.m. local time, and people in southern Lebanon have already started returning home. The CBC's Tom Perry is in northern Israel this morning. And Tom, does this ceasefire appear to be holding?
For now, it does. I'm in a town called Kiryat Shmona. It's in the very northern part of Israel, really right on the border with Lebanon. I was just talking to a woman a short while ago. She's just returned to her home. This town has been evacuated. It's really still a bit of a ghost town. She'd come back with her kids, said her kids hadn't been there in a year. In the time that we were talking, we heard an artillery shell. Since then, I've heard 2 more. So this is all very tentative on this side of the border. I was speaking to another fellow here. The guy's name is Roni Fella, and here's what he said about this ceasefire and what he thought of it.
It won't be for long. From Israel, from our side, it's going to be like they signed. But at the other side, the meaning of this break...
We've seen scenes on the Lebanese side of the border of cars rushing back to the south of Lebanon, people trying to get back to their homes. Here, it's more tentative. Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, has been trying to assure people that if there is any breach of the ceasefire by Hezbollah, that Israel retains the right to strike back.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Tom Perry reporting from Kiryat Shmona in northern Israel. Australia has passed a bill that would ban social media for anyone under the age of 16. It would be the first law of its kind anywhere in the world. The Senate now needs to finalize the bill. It would make social media platforms like TikTok, Facebook, and X liable for failure to prevent children from holding accounts. Fines would be in the tens of millions of dollars. If the law passes, the platforms would have 1 year to work out how to implement age restrictions before penalties are enforced. There are growing worries about the groundwater beneath Yukon's capital. New research suggests high levels of heavy metals in the untreated water. As Julian Green reports, researchers say some of the levels are above Canada's safe drinking water guidelines.
It's very important for people to understand what they're drinking.
Mary Smolchek is a researcher with Yukon University. After analyzing data from wells and springs, her team found 30% of tests contain uranium above federal limits. Smolchek says the issue isn't unique to Whitehorse. Where there's mineralization, there are heavy metals.
It's everywhere. We need to check the quality of our groundwater to make sure that people are drinking what a quality that Health Canada recommends.
The research states excess exposure to heavy metals can come with serious health risks, including kidney damage, cancer, and impaired brain function. Joel Kubley is an associate professor with Yukon University. He says the study has been generating a lot of interest, and perhaps with good reason. The city is considering banning mining activity in municipal limits.
There's pressure for us as a research team to get data out into the public sphere so it can inform decision-making.
Still, an environmental chemist says while heavy metals can be treated, the preliminary results should be taken seriously. Miriam Diamond is with the University of Toronto.
If somebody's drawing drinking water from that location, then some of these results are of concern.
Researchers are waiting on final results to confirm what they've found. That includes how heavy metals like uranium could be naturally leaching into groundwater, and whether human activity like mining could be affecting that process. They expect to produce a report within the next 3 years. Julian Green, CBC News, Whitehorse.
It is a sloppy, wet, snowy day in Seoul. The South Korean capital has been hit with the heaviest snowfall it has ever recorded in November. There is about 18 centimeters of snow on the ground.
평소에 입지 않았던 내복도 입고 좀 장갑도 이렇게 좀 착용을 하려고 생각을 했었어요.
This woman says she put on thermal underwear today, something she rarely does. Traffic in Seoul is snarled. Power has been knocked out in some places, and more than 200 flights have been canceled. In the U.S., nearly 80 million people are expected to travel by plane, train, or automobile for Thanksgiving. But wintry weather and staffing shortages at major U.S. airports have many preparing for chaos. Freelance reporter Tony Waterman has more from Austin.
If you can spill it, spray it, pour it, pump it, or spread it, then it's a liquid and limited to 3.4 ounces.
Transportation Security Administration spokeswoman Patricia Mancha is asking travelers to be aware of carry-on restrictions to help keep security lines moving. A record number of people are expected to fly this Thanksgiving, nearly 3 million on Wednesday alone. Caroline Cosgrove and Rob Fulmer are relying on all types of transport. They've flown in from Oregon, are renting a car here in Austin before catching a bus later to Houston.
It's been fine. I mean, the flight was fine. It was uneventful.
Traffic, we're taking the bus, so it's the bus driver's problem.
But even the best laid plans could get derailed. The Federal Aviation Administration says it may have to slow air traffic in hubs like New York and New Jersey due to a shortage of air traffic controllers. And two major storms are threatening rain, ice, and snow on both coasts. Kimmy Hai works for Austin Airport.
We always tell passengers to check with their airlines because there could be weather where you're arriving or where you're connecting.
Travelers asked to pack their patience on what is expected to be the busiest Thanksgiving travel week in U.S. history. Tony Waterman for CBC News, Austin, Texas.
Toronto author Wendy H. Wong has been named this year's winner of the Balsillie Prize for Public Policy. She won for her book, We the Data, Human Rights in the Digital Age. It looks at how mass data collection affects democratic freedom. Each year, the Writers' Trust of Canada awards a nonfiction book it believes advances and influences public policy. Jurors are called Wong's book an eye-opening, gripping look at the ways in which humanity is being codified, monitored, and tracked. The prize comes with a $60,000 award. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone. Here we are on Wednesday morning. Thanks for joining us live in downtown Winnipeg. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC. So this hour, we're going to continue talking about body cameras. Winnipeg police do not wear them. Yesterday, we heard from an advocate in the community that said they should think about wearing them, and that would be following suit to the RCMP. You might recall that RCMP are now wearing body cameras, including in Steinbach. This hour, a different point of view. We're going to talk to an expert who warns against putting all of your eggs in the shiny new basket, so to speak. We'll have that conversation coming up. He's wary about body cameras, so stay tuned. Also, we're going to hear from one of Santa's helpers who's working to spread cheer to senior citizens, specifically in Winnipeg this season. And then coming up at 10 to 8, yet more analysis of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump and his threats to slap a 25% tariff on all Canadian goods. Premier Wab Kinew yesterday said that Trump's tariffs would send Manitoba into a recession, but we have a local entrepreneur who thinks it may not be all that bad. Why does he say that? We're going to talk to him at 10 to 8. Heather Wells is here with more on these stories and more. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba pork producers fear their industry will effectively stop selling to the U.S. if Donald Trump goes ahead with his plan to slap those tariffs on Canadian imports. This province exported $439 million worth of pork and live pigs to the U.S. in 2023. We're going to hear how other businesses that export to the U.S. could be hit. That's coming up as well. Well, an expert in online sex predators calls Snapchat the Wild West for kids after a 20-year-old Steinbach man was charged with 2 counts of luring a child. Cybertip.ca wants governments to do more to protect children. I'll be back with more Manitoba News at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby.
Let's start off in southwestern Manitoba, where we have that fog advisory in effect this morning. That dense fog will be creating a near-zero visibility in that region, which will affect Brandon and surrounding areas, making travel a bit tricky. So that will be lifting later this morning. Drivers should be cautious as travel conditions may change. Now, if visibility reduces, you just have to slow down and watch out for tail lights and also be prepared to stop. Currently, Winnipeg -7. Today, expect mainly cloudy skies. We do have this slight chance of flurries in the forecast this morning. Some fog patches noticed here and there. That should clear up, and then it will stay calm with light winds. A high for today will only get to -6. And the weather across board fairly similar with other regions. Western Manitoba, that fog and snowing, and then light snow also for the Parkland, Interlake region into south central Manitoba. Though further north, we're going to see light snow beginning around the noon period for Thompson, Churchill, the Power, Flin Flon, and we'll be seeing highs around 8 to -10 there. But for Winnipeg today, we'll only get to a high of -6. Currently, it is -7 in the city.
All right, thanks, Abby Adiyemi.
Thank you.
Corey Funk?
Really, the only major issues out there on the highway today is that visibility that Abby was talking about, pretty much all the way down from the U.S. border around Cartwright in southwestern Manitoba up to Russell. I'm seeing poor visibility conditions on the highway, so just be really careful. Brandon, Russell, Cartwright, everything in between. So if you see anything else still going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, as I just mentioned, RCMP officers started wearing body cams now. Mounties in Steinbach began this on Friday, so last week. 44 detachments in our province will receive body cams over the next 5 months, and for some, it's a long time coming in calls for police accountability. Sheila North is a longtime MMIWG advocate and former Grand Chief of Manitoba Kiwait Naui Okimakinak. She says that Winnipeg police should follow suit. She was on the show yesterday.
I think it's an absolutely necessary tool, especially at this time. I think it's long overdue for Winnipeg Police to have them. I don't understand how the Winnipeg Police Board haven't implemented them earlier. They should be held accountable.
However, one expert says body cameras may not be the solution that everyone thinks that they could be. Christopher Schneider is a professor of sociology at Brandon University. Good morning.
Good morning.
Sheila North, I should mention here, I feel this is just responsible to say, I mean, while she does feel body cameras are a tool that could be implemented and would do good, she also does understand that they aren't sort of the only answer. In your view, though, why do you think body cams aren't helpful?
Well, I think the research literature just doesn't support that they're effective in terms of the testing of the devices, which has sought to see if they reduce police use of force and civilian complaints. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And recently the conversations have shifted to accountability and transparency. And the big problem with that is these two terms are typically not tested or measured in the scientific research literature. So we actually don't know if the cameras are going to contribute to accountability and transparency. And indeed, body-worn cameras are much less, if at all, transparent in a Canadian context.
What does that mean?
Well, when you look and say, the United States, there's a lot of body-worn camera footage that's released because you have 50 different states, and jurisdictions, and policies. So listeners will know that, of course, this is on the internet. It's the stuff of nightly newscasts in the U.S. In Canada, however, the privacy legislation is federal and is very strict, and it largely prohibits police from releasing body-worn camera footage to the public, which means Canadians and Winnipeggers, when I think the body-worn cameras do come to Winnipeg, can expect to not see body-worn camera footage. In other words, when there's a critical incident, say a shooting, the police and the IIU, they're going to review the body-worn camera footage when there's an investigation, and they're essentially going to come up with a finding and say, we looked at the footage and this is what we saw, and trust us, take our word for it. They're not going to release it. All the while, the bystander video will be online, and I'm not so sure this is going to restore public trust in policing in Winnipeg.
If they changed that, Christopher, so that if somehow that changed, I realize we're talking about privacy laws, so I know this is not a easy answer, but if somehow that changed, would your thinking about body cams be different based on what you've researched about them? Like when you look at it in the United States, where they see all of the footage, is there more of a case to be made for police to be wearing them?
I mean, that also comes with its own problems. So I published several papers about that. And the issue with if the law changes is do police then get discretion to release body-worn camera footage when they like? So in the United States, police services typically are quick to release footage when it shows an officer, say, rescuing somebody from a burning building. But when we have a critical incident, they often will stonewall or block access to footage and say things like it can compromise the investigation and so on. I think what we can do to strengthen body-worn cameras in the Canadian context, and members of the public can do this, is to have very strict policies about their use. When you look at policies, for example, with the RCMP in Toronto and other police services, officers who have been found after an investigation to have intentionally turned their cameras off or, say, blocked the lens, even including in use of force incidents, are very rarely, if ever, fired and very rarely, if ever, go to prison. Often they're demoted or say they get docked a day's pay. I think a very strict policies for officers who have found to have done this should be fired immediately. And if we take police administrators at their word that most officers are good people and are not doing these things, very strict policies would affect very few police officers.
It's hard still for the average person not to see how having footage, period, wouldn't do more good than harm. I mean, I know Sheila North was saying even just not from the perception of the public, but also for the police officers, right, that may want to have a record of events. I want to weigh this against cost, and I don't know if Ottawa, when we look at the cost, is committing nearly $240 million over 6 years. In Manitoba, it will cost around $2 million every year once all 674 frontline officers are fitted with body-worn cameras. And now I'm talking RCMP here. You have concerns about the cost. Tell us why.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm in love with the idea of body-worn cameras. I desperately want them to work like everyone else does. But when you look at cost and we look at the question of what is it that police do? I mean, the police are supposed to reduce crime, prevent crime, apprehend criminals, investigate crime. The idea is about crime. Body-worn cameras are not going to stop crime or reduce crime. We do know, again, based on evidence and research literature, that if we invest money in social infrastructure, like, for example, affordable housing, job training, drug and rehabilitation centers, and so on, these do lead to concrete, discernible reductions in crime, and therefore increase community safety and make communities better and safer. And if we imagine, if you just took a sliver with the RCMP of the hundreds of millions of dollars that the feds have given the RCMP and invested that in communities in the north, say in northern Manitoba, some communities that don't even have access to clean drinking water, it would be life-changing for those people in those communities. So I think this is the real question that people should struggle with is, what are we actually concerned about? Are we concerned about reducing crime and making communities safer and better? Or are we concerned about putting cameras on police officers that the research literature just says that they're ineffective sometimes?
Maybe both is the answer to that question. I wonder if there's situations where body cameras are helpful.
Yeah, I mean, yes, they are. So they do provide evidentiary value. So, with this shooting example, for example, over the weekend in Winnipeg, body-worn cameras are a piece of the puzzle piece of the broader narrative. When police officers and administrators say that these are going to show us the complete depiction of events, this is often ingenuine, or it's not entirely true, because there's a call for service after something has happened, say somebody's in public with an edged weapon. When the officer shows up at the scene, that's when the recording starts. So there's a whole bunch that's happened before that will never be on the body-worn camera footage and will sometimes be on bystander footage. So these are different puzzle pieces that would make its way into courtrooms to help us get a more fulsome understanding of what it is that happened.
Always appreciate having you on. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me.
That's Christopher Schneider, professor of sociology at Brandon University. He's been studying this for a very long time. We've talked to him over the years as more and more research comes out. And now, again, in this moment, his expertise comes forward to offer a different perspective on the body cameras and their effectiveness. For more on the story, please read at cbc.ca/Manitoba and form your own thought around this. It is 7:21 a.m.
This winter, help us make the season kind by supporting Harvest Manitoba. I'm Vince Barletta, CEO of Harvest Manitoba. All it takes is one can of food, $1, or even 1 hour of your time. Join CBC as we donate a day of programming in support of Harvest Manitoba December 6th. Find ways to give to Harvest Manitoba at cbc.ca/kindmb.
It is 7:21 a.m. The fog advisory's just ended for Western Manitoba. It's now misty in Brandon this morning. Well, sometimes you get a song stuck in your head and the only way to get it out is to play it on the radio. That is, if you're me and you're a radio host, so you can do that. And I'm lucky because this is a Canadian group. So here are the Reclaws and One Beer Away to brighten up our morning.
Up in your head instead of hitting the clouds. Just a bit of rain got you feeling like you're drowning. Don't worry, brother, I got you covered. It's just one boot in front of the other. 'Cause I'm only 2 rows down. So come on by, you know I'll be around. Let's make it right when the world gets you down and you just need a break. What you say? I'm only 1 beer away from that taste of freedom on a Friday night, to letting go and falling into the time of your life. If you ask God and He answered with a neon sign, let's raise some hell for heaven's sake. 'Cause I'm only 1 beer away, singing along to songs you don't even know, to lifting up that Dixie cup full of something that's cold. From your worst day to your best night, got a heavy heart, he's a bush light. You name the time and place, I'm only 1 beer away.
We got all night to figure it out. Won't let you fall, let you hit the ground. So don't worry, sister, 'cause I got a fixer. Yeah, I got your name on a picture. 'Cause
I'm only 2 rows down. So come on by, you know I'll be around. So let's make it right when the world gets you down and you just need a break. What you say? I'm only 1 beer away from that taste of freedom on a Friday night, to letting go and falling into the time of your life. If you ask God and He answered with a neon sign, let's raise some hell for heaven's sake. 'Cause I'm only 1 beer away, singing along to songs you don't even know, to lifting up that Dixie cup full of something that's cold. From your worst day to your best night, got a heavy heart, he's a bush light. You name the time and place, I'm only 1 beer away. You name the time and place. 'Cause I'm only 1 beer away. And that taste of freedom on a Friday night, to letting go and falling into the time of your life. If you ask God and He answered with a neon sign, let's raise some hell for heaven's sake. 'Cause I'm only 1 beer away, singing along to songs you don't even know, to lifting up that Dixie cup full of something that's cold. From your worst day to your best night, got a heavy heart, he's a bush light. You name the time and place, I'm only 1 beer away. You name the time and place. 'Cause I'm only 1 beer away.
Scott Reguer, that is sports music if I ever heard it.
Oh, yeah, I'm ready to go. Ready to go now. That was great.
Sometimes you just need a little pick-me-up. That's the Reclaws. They're a country music duo, by the way. If you don't know them out of Ontario, they're really popular. But, I mean, Jenna and Stuart Walker are their names. They're siblings. So, yeah, there you go. It's been an
Sounds a
earworm.
little better than me and my sister Karen belting it out in the car, I'll tell you that.
Well, me and Helen had it going on, I got to say. Me and my sister could, you know.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I'll never do it on the radio with you, but...
You knew my head was going there, so you preempted that. Got it.
The Reclaws, by the way, actually used to sing the CFL song. So let's start with the CFL.
I thought so, yeah.
Big trade.
Yeah. Yesterday, the Calgary Stampeders acquired quarterback Vernon Adams Jr. from the BC Lions for a handful of draft picks. It means that Bombers fans that were hoping not to have to face the mobile quarterback Adams as often are out of luck. When it comes to the Bombers, though, outside of re-signing kicker Sergio Castillo, they haven't made any moves yet. This is due in large part to the potential upheaval of the front office and coaching staff. Offensive coordinator Buck Pierce, defensive assistant Richie Hall, assistant general managers Ted Govea and Danny McManus, all interviewing for positions elsewhere. And all this has led to a unique start to the offseason for GM Kyle Walters.
It's an interesting one this year with where we're at. I mean, we've got coaches interviewing for jobs. We've got Ted and Danny interviewing for jobs. So, you're hesitant to have too much conversations with people that may not be in the organization next year. So it's kind of just been me and Mike at this moment, huddled together, talking next year.
Two-man band when they talk about Kyle Walters and Mike O'Shea. I know that Walters says it was nonsensical that neither McManus nor Govea had a GM job already. So once those moves start being made, then the Bombers can begin their off-season in earnest, I suppose.
Meantime, the Winnipeg Jets are in LA tonight.
Yeah, this is a 6-game road trip that they're on, and this is the 4th stop on it. The last time out, the Jets beat the team right behind them in the overall NHL standings, Minnesota. So they're continuing their fine run of form. The Kings, meanwhile, can say the very opposite. They got thumped in their last game by the lowly San Jose Sharks, 7-2. So you would think the Kings would be hungry tonight. But if we want to talk about hunger and players in this game, you got to think Alex Iafallo, Gabe Vilardi, and Rasmus Kupari, all of whom came over in that deal from the Kings for Pierre-Luc Dubois, masterstroke by Kevin Cheveldayoff off that. All those 3 guys I mentioned are going to be very hungry tonight to score against their former club. In fact, Vilardi, the last time he played against the Kings, had 4 points. So that would bode well, you would think, for Winnipeg tonight.
Let's finish with baseball. Baseball, where the rich are getting richer.
Oh, man, as if the Shohei Ohtani-led World Series champs, Marcy, aren't loaded enough. Now they're signing reigning Cy Young Award winner Blake Snell? Snell is going to make close to $200 million over the next 5 seasons in Dodger blue. And a reminder that the reason the Dodgers can afford massive contracts like these is because Ohtani is deferring almost all of his own salary so that he's making right now just over the major league minimum. Heavy sigh. And before I go...
And a line drive to center field. That'll be down for a hit. 2 runs are going to score. Joey Loperfito's first.
That's the sound of Jays outfielder Joey Loperfito when he was still with the Houston Astros getting his first major league hit. The Topps trading card company, Marcy, made a special edition card for that moment, as it does for many players now in their debut games. Since there's only one card in circulation, it's highly coveted, especially by the players themselves. To wit, Loperfito signed that card and on the back of it wrote a note asking whoever finds it in their pack to direct message him, because Loperfito is offering Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow with his family in return for that card.
What? Wow. Okay.
Isn't that something?
Get looking.
I don't. Yeah, I know. A lot of turkey in it for him, or whoever gets this.
Thanks, Scott.
Yep.
That is something. Scott Regehr with Morning Sports. Coming up, we're going to hear how to be a Santa to a senior. And just before the news, I want to mention Fred called the commuter line and said Highway 15 between Dugald and Winnipeg right now, very slippery and misty. And there's a few cars in the ditch, in fact. So please go slow and be mindful. 788-3093. And your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:30. It is -7 in Winnipeg. A lot like yesterday as far as temperature goes. -6 is our high today, but wait for it. Tomorrow, a lot colder. Manitoba businesses that export goods to the United States are trying to figure out how they will be affected by Donald Trump's proposed tariffs on Canadian imports. According to the Manitoba Bureau of Statistics, this province exported $15.5 billion worth of exports to the U.S. last year. The biggest export? Medications, $2.3 billion worth in 2023. Andrea Ledecour is president of the Bioscience Association of Manitoba.
That's what everyone's trying to grapple with, is probably the severity of it. We know it's going to be very severe, but what does that mean? And so for our companies that send to the United States, this will be detrimental. We're just not sure how.
Other major Manitoba exports to the U.S. last year included canola, electricity, frozen veggies, oil and gas, agricultural equipment, and pork. And while many worry about these proposed tariffs, southern Manitoba grain farmer Landon Friesen isn't throwing his hands in the air just yet.
I'm feeling optimistic. I think it'll be okay as long as we don't run around with our heads cut off about this and freak out.
Friesen hauls his wheat to North Dakota. He says he's on the 20th of 150 loads he plans to deliver through the winter. Canada's premiers have an emergency meeting scheduled for this afternoon with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The virtual call will deal exclusively with Trump's threat to impose those across-the-board tariffs on all Canadian products. Trudeau is asking for what he calls a united Team Canada response. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. An expert in online sex predators wants governments to do more to protect children. A 20-year-old Steinbach man was charged with 2 counts of luring a child. Tyson Vandenbosch arrested for communicating online with minors for a sexual purpose. RCMP have released a Snapchat avatar used by Vandenbosch, and you can see that on our website. Stephen Sauer is director of cybertip.ca at the Canadian Centre for Child Protection.
It is really the Wild West for kids in this space. And what we need to see is more regulation. We need to see companies held accountable for what's happening on their platforms, and we need to see them do more to create safe spaces for children.
Sauer says in the last 5 years, there has been a 760% increase in luring incidents across Canada, and 3,000 reports a year reported to the Cybertip line. The chair of Winnipeg's Public Safety Committee wants more community safety officers on buses. But Janice Luke says that's not possible without setting aside more funding. The Union for Winnipeg Transit Drivers is calling on the city to add more community safety officers. Violent incidents have gone down 15% since those officers first stepped foot on buses earlier this year. Luke says she and the mayor agree the safety team seems to be working.
It's proving to be very effective. Would I like to see more? I would like to see more, but it comes down to the funding.
The community safety team's allotment for next year will be included in the upcoming budget, and that is slated to be released on December 11th. Manitoba's progressive conservatives are raising concerns about bed shortages at Winnipeg's largest hospital and the impact it could have on surgeries. A memo from Shared Health Management to surgeons at the Health Sciences Centre points out there's no bed capacity and surgical slates are being cancelled. The memo also warns surgical discharges need to be optimized. PC Health critic Kathleen Cook says the memo would impact the health system as a whole.
These are surgeries that in many cases people have been waiting some length of time for, surgeries to alleviate debilitating pain that takes people out of the workforce and out of their everyday lives.
Now, Shared Health did not deny the memo's existence. However, it does deny any surgical beds at the Health Sciences Centre have been closed. The Weather Network is forecasting a colder Canadian winter than what we saw last year. That is already evident in parts of Western Canada. But the network says at least 2 provinces are in for a rude awakening, and it's not Manitoba. It says Ontario and Quebec could see more snow and cold over the next 3 weeks than what they saw in all of last winter. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, Heather, thank you.
You're welcome.
Digging out the warm stuff. Abby Adiemi is here. It was funny, Abby. Earlier this morning, I was just saying, here's Abby. And I thought you've now become on our show like Cher or Beyonce or Prince or like just say you're like by first name. You're known.
Yeah, true. I'll take that.
We made you weather famous. You've got not bad news in the forecast today.
Not bad news, just more like a cold and cloudy start. And that fog advisory has ended for southwestern Manitoba. Though the fog is still being spotted here and there, that should lift this morning. So if you're driving on the highway, you may still want to remain cautious. But in Winnipeg, it is -7 with light snow at the airport. For the Winnipeg area today, we should be seeing more like mainly cloudy cloudy skies. We do have a slight chance of flurries in the forecast. Fog patches will be clearing up this morning, and then conditions will remain calm with light winds being felt here and there. The high for today will reach at -6, and then tonight cloudy conditions will continue with light snow starting around midnight, though it's going to be breezy and cold because we'll be dropping to around -12. Heading west to Westman, currently in Brandon, it is -14 with mist, which will still be affecting visibility for drivers there. That should clear this morning, but cloudy skies will remain in the forecast with light snow beginning sometime in the afternoon for the regions. You should see highs around -10. In the south central region, in Morden, we're currently at -9 with overcast being spotted here and there. That should bring a slight chance of flurries to come with that, and then some fog patches clearing up this morning. Temperatures will be around -7. Down in the Parkland region, Dauphin is sitting at -14. We're going to see some light snow this morning. Cloudy weather will continue. This period of light snow will try to taper off, but then return around the noon period, and you'd see some fog patches this morning, which will be clearing up. High will be around -10. Moving into the Interlake region, currently Gimli is at -8. The region will experience mainly cloudy conditions with a slim chance of flurries in the forecast. Fog patches spotted this morning will be lifting, and then we'll see light winds that will stay with you for most of the day. Your high will be around -5. The Pamphlet Flon, we're looking at temperatures around -12 with light snow falling at this time. You got some fog patches earlier that should be clearing up this morning. The high will be around -10. And if we go up north to Thompson and the Churchill region, Thompson is currently at -9 with light snow. You should expect this to stay with you for most of the day, while Churchill is at -10 with cloudy conditions, and the forecast for that region calls for mostly cloudy conditions to stay, and then we'll see a chance of flurries later on in the day. High will be around -9 for the region. So across board, we're looking at a cold and cloudy start, but for Winnipeg, we should see more like cloudy conditions, light snow in the forecast, and a high of -6. We're just at -7 now.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk.
Got a couple calls on the commuter line about slippery highway conditions. One, Highway 8 between Winnipeg and Gimli, very slippery right now. Also heard from Fred, Highway 15 between Dugald and Winnipeg, also very slippery right now. Actually, they said they saw a couple cars in the ditch, so just heads up there if you're on Highway 15 this morning. As well, just poor visibility in western Manitoba, as you heard as well. Might be some issues throughout the morning if you are heading everywhere from Russell through Brandon down all the way down to Cartwright. Might be some poor visibility on the highways in western Manitoba. If you see anything else going on, though, here in Winnipeg or outside on the highways, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, next on your Wednesday morning show here on CBC, a 2023 report found as many as 41% of Canadians aged 50 and older are at risk of social isolation, and the holiday season can be particularly difficult. Many find themselves alone and without those connections over the winter months. The National Institute on Aging says that the holidays can increase feelings of loneliness, especially among seniors. So 17 years ago, a Winnipeg home care agency adopted something called Be a Santa to a Senior program. Home Instead acts as a makeshift Christmas workshop where gifts are prepared and wrapped for delivery, and they're doing it again this year. Lauren Roroniak is the Community Partnerships Manager at Home Instead. This is, though, her first year leading the program, and she joins us via Zoom. Hi there.
Hi, good morning. How are you guys?
We're doing well. So how excited are you to lead this program this year?
I am. It is it's the most rewarding. We serve up to about 500 financially marginalized residents with gifts this year. So we started in August, and it's all hands on deck.
What kinds of gifts are you looking to have donated for part of this year's drive?
So we actually, it's personalized gifts, actually. So we reach out to personal care homes with financially marginalized residents, and they send their wish lists. So it's anywhere from about a $30 to $40 range per gift. The gifts range from house coats all the way down to coloring books, things for entertainment, extras that they may not be able to purchase for themselves, or they may not receive from family members because they are typically on the lonelier side during the holidays. And then we all the way down to the basics like shampoos, conditioners, body washes, deodorants, things of that nature.
And what can you tell us about how you make the matches with the seniors and how you, how you understand what they would want?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually start the process in August. So we have a handful of personal care homes that we've worked with over the last 17 years, and they go to each resident in their personal care home and ask them what they'd like. And they send their list in to me early October. And then I go out and work with local businesses and a few partners that we have in the city here. And they work with either their customers or their employees. And everybody kind of goes to town and gets the gifts, and we get them all back in our office.
And if someone wants to be matched with a Winnipeg senior this holiday season, how does it, where do they reach out, or how can they support the initiative?
Yeah, they can go to, we have a couple tree sites in the city. So the Winnipeg Winter Club, last I heard, they were finished their tags though. All their tags have been distributed, but that is one that's always been, that's a long-standing partner with Home Instead and the Be a Santa program. And the Fort Garry Access at 135 Plaza Drive, they still have tags on their Christmas tree, as well as London Drugs and St. Vital Mall.
So we should explain that. If you go to these sites, you go to a tree, the tags are on the ornaments. Is that correct? And then you...
Yes. Yeah, that's correct. So I have put the resident's name, if they're male or a female, and then what their wish list is on each tag. Those tags are hanging on the tree. You sign the tag out with the representative from that location, and the gifts are all due back December 6th.
What's the reaction from seniors? You started a bit by saying why you loved being involved, but what's the real gratitude like when you're part of a program like this?
You know what? It really is just making a difference and putting a smile on people's faces. So, given the time of the year, and we may take it for granted if we have family to see, family, friends, different events and stuff to attend during the holiday season. These are typically people that don't have any of that. So, never mind putting the gift aside, but it's just even that sense of community and seeing different faces, quite frankly, and knowing that there are people out there that care for them.
Where can people go to find more information online, Lauren?
They can go to homeinstead.com, and we have one location. Our office is located at 610 Sherbrooke Street. So if there are any donations, if you did have any sort of toiletries, all the way up to towels or anything unused, any sort of chocolates or treats, no home baking, but anything that you would like to donate can always be dropped off at 610 Sherbrooke Street as well.
All right. Well, good luck the rest of the way. Thank you so much for being with us this morning on CBC.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
That was Lauren Roroniak. She's the Community Partnerships Manager from Home Instead, a locally owned home care agency. So if you want to learn more, as she mentioned, you can go to also, you can simply Google, Be a Santa to a Senior, Winnipeg.
If there's one thing I know about Canadians, it's that we're kind and we want to help.
All it takes is one can, $1.
Or even an hour of your time.
This winter, help us to make the season kind. Find ways to give to food banks in your community at cbc.ca/kind.
It is right now 7:45 a.m. That's coming up very soon, next Friday, right? Light snow falling in Winnipeg, as Abby mentioned. -8's the current temperature on your Wednesday morning here. Thank you for joining us wherever you're joining us from. Well, we have a bit of music next on the show. Winnipeg singer-songwriter J.P. Ho has shared an alternative take on his 2022 album, Botanicals. It features off-the-floor recordings and plenty of beautiful string instruments to fill out every song. Here is a cut from that. This is J.P. Ho with the string session version of Where the Bullets Lie.
Curse the world when it hurts, though it might not help a thing. Won't change the fact you're not intact right now. the last time you cast out into the sea. Don't let your pride anchor me. You've been crashing like waves in the night. Can't fight the tide. I know you're drowning. Can you hang on till darkness turns light? I'll pull you dry, or I'll die trying. If it's revenge you seek, don't look for me. It's where I draw the line. Let it pass, the anger will subside. I'll be still as stone, you can let me know where the bullets lie. Always time to make things right. You've been crashing like waves in the night. Can't fight the tide. I know you're drowning. Can you hang on till darkness turns light? I'll pull you dry, or I'll die trying. All things come must pass. We won't end like that. All things come must pass. We won't end like that. You've been crashing like waves in the night. Can't fight the tide. I know you're drowning. Can you hang on till darkness turns light? I'll pull you dry, or I'll die trying.
Big fan. Love the strings. That's from the new EP Botanicals. JP Ho with a new version with fuller strings with Where the Bullets Lie. His holiday show, by the way, JP Ho Ho Ho, it's coming up on December 20th at the Burton Cummings Theatre. It is 11 minutes now to 8 o'clock. It's -8, as mentioned, in Winnipeg. In Brandon, the fog advisory has been lifted, but there's still mist, light snow, and -14. And we are getting calls about the highways, by the way. A lot of slick highways around southern Manitoba, so take it easy out there. And just note that, especially, I think Corey's been saying in eastern Manitoba is where we've, Highway 15 specifically, pardon me, Highway 15 is where we've seen a lot of slick issues. 788-3093. That's where you call Corey if you have an update. Coming up on the program after 8, world-renowned author, scientist, and animal behaviorist and autism advocate Temple Grandin is going to be live with us in studio to talk about her new books and why she's in Winnipeg. Now 77 years old, she paved the way for so much understanding and literally changing people's lives who live with autism. So look forward to speaking with Temple Grandin here in studio after 8. Right now, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump wants to impose the 25% tariff on Canadian and Mexican goods entering the United States. This we know. He says it's one of the first things he's going to do when he takes office January 20th. Trump says he'll make good on the promise unless Canada and Mexico do more to stop the flow of, quote, drugs and migrants across their shared borders. Here's what Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew said about the proposed tariffs yesterday.
We look at the potential impact of a 25% tariff. All sorts of stats we could share. The bottom line is it would mean a recession for our province. And we can't have that happen, especially as we're starting to make progress on healthcare and education and making a lot of good investments. We want to keep that momentum going.
Winnipegger Brian Sharfstein is director and co-owner of shoe retail company Canadian Footwear. While he understands why the news is concerning, of course, for so many, he has mixed feelings about it, and he joins us to talk about this morning. Hi there.
Good morning.
Why don't we start with what the Premier said there, Brian? He said these tariffs could cause a recession. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we've seen this before. I mean, recessions are nothing new. And given the way our provincial government is moving, it will have an impact. But certainly we haven't been here before to some degree. It will depend on how the business acumen are of our provincial government in handling this. I'm waiting to see.
How much confidence do you have around that, the business acumen, as you put it, of the provincial government to handle this?
I'm right in the middle of it. How much confidence? I haven't seen a lot of business acumen. We see a lot of changes going on. Certainly being involved at the civic and provincial level, I stay on top of most things. And there are changes going on, but we're not seeing anything major that would encourage me to say that it won't have an impact on us. I think that things are moving slowly.
What do you need as a business owner from your leaders, as you mentioned, both the civic and the provincial level, to give you that confidence? What would you need to be seeing in terms of having confidence that they could plan for this, or that they could weather this?
Well, we don't appear to be a make it happen kind of province and city from a business perspective. Small and medium-sized business struggles here. And we're certainly a third-generation business, and we've seen recessions before. And having said that, you need a government that's going to listen to what the concerns are, removing some of the red tape. They certainly are looking at taxing and making it more challenging on different fronts. But again, this isn't anything, Marcy, we haven't seen before. It's a matter of how we stick handle it, if that's the right term. We will survive.
The mixed feelings specifically about the tariffs, what could be positive about them?
Well, not that we see that much tourism coming up, but certainly I expect that we'll see more Americans coming up here to shop because of the difference of dollar. And certainly I think we'll be a little bit more competitive if that has an impact. From a local perspective, I think when we've seen recessions before, people buy smarter. They don't necessarily look for cheaper goods, but they think a little bit more about buying the right goods. So history has showed us that locally, and I would think it might be across the country as well, people are going to buy smarter. They're going to buy something that will last longer, not less disposable product. That's why I don't think it's going to hurt us. I think that we're going to see this thing through. And I'm concerned that a lot of people will overthink it. And also, I think a lot has to do with public perception. That really is an issue. We have all these other impacts with supply chain and strikes like postal. These are actively been going on. This is only one more thing, and I don't think this is going to sink the ship.
How much business do you do in the States, Brian?
It's negligible. We certainly have been looking at it. We do e-commerce business into the States, but nothing that is significant. We have focused in Canada the last few years, and that's where our growth is right here in Canada. We do bring some product in from the U.S. I don't see that changing, but certainly we will remain competitive or more competitive. We won't necessarily be able to ship some of those goods into the States. And so even given right now, if I can use the comparable with the postal strike, the cost of us shipping those goods to the States now have become prohibitive. So we're holding those orders, and our customers in the U.S. understand that because, again, we have to be competitive. So we're limited. We'll watch what happens there, but we're not concerned because that's not the biggest part of our business as a small business.
You said that you are concerned about public perception, consumer perception around this. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Well, I think that there's three sides to all stories, and I don't know that the average person who's reading the papers, who's listening to media, really understands the whole picture. I'm a big believer that if it doesn't affect you, and I think in terms of the city, if something doesn't happen in your part of town, it may not affect you, so you don't think about it. Well, I'm not sure how this will impact the consumer, our citizens, certainly here. And again, I look at our customer, and respectfully, our job is to educate them, to help them understand what people are buying. And so creating a perception, there's a reality and there's a perception. So we work very, very hard at educating our customers. And I think that if we can have the consumers, if we can have citizens better understand the overall picture, that word recession is scary. There's certain things that are going to throw fear and that perception is we're in trouble. And I don't think that we are. I think that people just have to see all sides of the story.
And just to try to get a bit more detail here, I know you said it's not a big part of your business, but you did mention you're holding orders that would go to the States. How many orders are you holding, or what percentage? I don't know what measurements you have for what size, what that means for your business.
Well less than 1 or maybe even 0.5%. It's negligible. I can go into my warehouse and look on one wall of what's going into the U.S. So it's not a lot. We do 99.9% of all of our business in Canada, so it really doesn't concern us.
Anything to add I haven't asked you about?
The only thing I would add is people need to be positive and encouraged that we're going to see our way through this. They shouldn't think they've got to stop buying. I think that they just have to ask more questions and educate themselves more with anything that they're going to buy right now, because we're seeing prices come in from everywhere. So educate yourself as a consumer and buy carefully.
Thank you for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Marcy.
That is Brian Sharfstein. He's director and co-owner of Canadian Footwear, longtime business owner here in our community. It is 3 minutes to 8 o'clock, and Heather Wells joins us with a news update this morning.
Good morning. Well, the Union for Winnipeg Transit Drivers wants more community safety officers on buses. They made that demand in a rally yesterday outside City Hall. Violent incidents have dropped since the community safety team made its debut earlier this year, but the union says there aren't enough of them to cover the entire system. The city of Brandon wants the province to let all Manitoba municipalities use photo radar enforcement. Right now, under the Highway Traffic Act of Manitoba, only Winnipeg can use photo radar. We'll hear more in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
2 minutes to 8 o'clock now on your Wednesday morning. The forecast, a high of -6 today. Right now we're sitting at -8, and we'll have a 30% chance of flurries and a cloudy day ahead. Highway 15, pretty slick. We're getting some calls from that area of the province, so take it easy. 788-3093 if you do need to reach us. And just want to mention one more time that Westman, the fog advisory is lifted. It's just misty now. Highway 8, by the way, also is pretty slippery according to the phone lines here. Coming up on the show, as I mentioned, world-renowned author, scientist, and animal behaviorist and autism advocate. A lot of titles for Temple Grandin. Temple Grandin is in Winnipeg, and she's going to join us in studio to talk about some of the new things that she advocates for now after many, many years. She is, of course, one of the original people that really changed the lens and understanding on animal behaviors, but also on autism. So looking forward to that live conversation in our CBC studio after 8.
Today on Q with Tom Power. Have you noticed that when it comes to what people are wearing, the 90s are kind of back? Wide leg jeans, plaid shirts, long hair. The designer Anna Sui is one of the most important fashion figures of the 90s. She has a lot of thoughts on why that time is back. She'll be here to tell you about it. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdelmahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
We have an exciting program today in front of a live audience in Saskatoon. Live music from Jeffrey Straker, a chat with authors Jan Martel and Alice Kuipers, 2 comedians, and the brand new mayor of Saskatoon in front of a live audience. A special edition of The Current in Saskatoon.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. For Canada's government, responding to Donald Trump's 25% tariff threat is an all-hands-on-deck effort. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will meet virtually with the premiers today. Let's bring in Janice McGregor from our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, the premiers have asked for First Ministers' meetings on a number of issues in the past, but this request was granted immediately. What's going on?
Marcia,
In their letter to the Prime Minister, premiers said they agree that there needs to be a Team Canada approach to dealing with the Trump administration. But they needed clarity about how Justin Trudeau plans to work with them on North American trade negotiations and who among his cabinet ministers would lead this file. A less than subtle dig at his leadership, perhaps. During last night's emergency debate, it was Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland listing off all the meetings she's had this month with business leaders and concluding,
"This is Team Canada."
Now, premiers, too, have representatives in Washington. They lobby key American players. As chair of the Premiers' Council, I asked Ontario Premier Doug Ford's office whether provinces are looking for more power now, whether they actually want a seat at the table with the Americans, like provinces had during the trade talks with the European Union. Ford's spokesperson didn't define what the premiers mean when they call for a Team Canada approach, but they will at least have a chance to be heard directly at today's meeting. Last night, opposition leader Pierre Poilievre was dismissive of the Trudeau government's focus on the process of convening all of these meetings instead of laying out a tangible plan to counter Donald Trump.
Now we learn that since the threat happened, he's come up with exactly one response: a Zoom call.
So they're all putting on Team Canada jerseys. How important is it to be delivering the same message?
Quite. A senior government source told CBC News that some of what's been said recently hasn't been helpful, like Alberta Premier Danielle Smith agreeing with Trump that there are issues at the border, just as Canada desperately needs to prove there aren't. And while Trudeau was making a diplomatic push to save NAFTA in his talks with the new Mexican president at the G20, for example, premiers were saying they've reached a consensus on negotiating only bilaterally with the U.S. in the future, barge pulling away from Canada's three-way agreement. Probably not helpful to have Team Canada skating in different directions on this.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Canada's oil patch is reacting to Trump's tariff threat. Oil is Canada's #1 export to the United States, and a 25% tariff could have a devastating effect on both Canadian industry and U.S. customers. The CBC's Paula Duhatschek has more on the concern and skepticism in Calgary.
The relative impact to Canada is so severe that it really just can't be allowed to happen.
Dennis McConaughey is a former executive with TC Energy in Calgary. Canada's #1 export to the United States is energy, and if Donald Trump's tariff were to proceed, McConaughey says industry here would be devastated. Still, former energy manager Rafi Tamazian says the oil patch shouldn't panic yet. He says Trump's advisors come from the world of business, not government, so their messages now are likely less about detailing policy, more about hammering out a deal.
Politicians tend to speak with intention and purpose. A business person is going to speak with the idea of using it as strategy for the ultimate maneuver. And so that makes it more difficult to predict what is coming.
Plus, given how dependent the U.S. is on Canadian energy imports, the tariff would also undermine another campaign promise to lower the cost of living for American consumers. Richard Masson is an executive fellow at the University of Calgary School of Public Policy.
If you put a tariff on it, you're really just imposing a cost on both producers and the consumers that probably results in higher gasoline, diesel, and jet prices in the U.S.
Others warn Trump's threat should be taken seriously. Reuters reporting Trump has no plans to spare crude oil from his tariff plan. In any case, Trump's message sends a signal: trade relations are off to a rocky start. Paula Duhatschek, CBC News, Calgary.
A ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah is now in effect, and world leaders are welcoming the development. Here's Australia's Foreign Minister, Penny Wong.
We hope that this is a catalyst for a broader ceasefire in the region, and we look forward to the day when there is a ceasefire too in Gaza.
People living near the border are starting to return home, but there are warnings it may not yet be safe. The CBC's Tom Perry is in northern Israel this morning.
I'm in a town called Kiryat Shmona. It's in the very northern part of Israel, really right on the border with Lebanon. I was just talking to a woman a short while ago. She's just returned to her home. This town has been evacuated. It's really still a bit of a ghost town. She'd come back with her kids, said her kids hadn't been there in a year. In the time that we were talking, we heard an artillery shell. Since then, I've heard 2 more. So this is all very tentative on this side of the border. By and large, though, this does seem to be holding. Now, we've seen scenes on the Lebanese side of the border of cars rushing back to the south of Lebanon, people trying to get back to their homes. Here, it's more tentative. Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, has been trying to assure people that if there is any breach of the ceasefire by Hezbollah, that Israel retains the right to strike back. Tom Perry, CBC News, Kiryat Shmona, Israel.
People are sweeping the streets around their businesses in Islamabad. Pakistan's capital is littered with burned out vehicles and broken glass. Protesters made their way past police barricades yesterday. The supporters of former Prime Minister Imran Khan were prepared to hold a sit-in to demand his release from prison. But overnight, security forces arrested hundreds of demonstrators. Others went home after Khan's PTI party announced a temporary suspension of the protest. Australia has passed a bill that would ban social media for anyone under the age of 16. It would be the first law of its kind anywhere in the world. The Senate now needs to finalize the bill. It would make social media platforms like TikTok, Facebook, and X liable for failure to prevent young children from holding accounts. Fines would be in the tens of millions of dollars. If the law passes, the platforms would have 1 year to work out how to implement age restrictions. Voters in Nova Scotia have handed the Progressive Conservatives an overwhelming majority. Premier Tim Houston called a snap election last month, and in the end, his government won their second straight majority by a landslide. The CBC's Kayla Hounsell has more from New Glasgow.
Premier Tim Houston arrives at Progressive Conservative Party headquarters in Pictou County, now poised to form what's called a supermajority in Nova Scotia, when a party wins 2/3 of the seats in the House of Assembly, meaning he won't require the cooperation of the opposition parties to change the procedural rules of the House. He's also the first Nova Scotia Premier in 40 years to grow a majority government.
So much is possible for this province, and I promise you, I will do everything I can to make it happen for this province, make it happen for you and for your family. I will give you everything I have.
Political observers say Houston called the election last month because he wanted it to happen while Justin Trudeau is still Prime Minister, successfully capitalizing, they say, on the unpopularity of the federal Liberals.
Our incredibly effective opposition has grown, and we are now the official opposition.
NDP leader Claudia Chender has pulled her party out of third place to form the official opposition. And for the Liberals, extraordinary disappointment. Leader Zach Churchill.
And the people of Nova Scotia have certainly decided who they want to lead this province. And we respect the voters' decisions and accept with humility in our hearts and with peace in our hearts what they've decided.
The Liberals haven't been this weak in the Nova Scotia legislature since 1963. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, New Glasgow, Nova Scotia.
After 50 days lost in the backwoods of BC, a hiker has been found alive. 20-year-old Sam Benestick went on a camping trip near Fort St. John back in October. He didn't come home. Search and rescue teams and police dogs were sent out to find him. It was called off eventually. Mike Reed is the general manager of the Buffalo Inn where Benestick's family was staying during the search. He says the hiker was finally found by workers grading the roads near a natural gas well.
They just said they grabbed the sticks from him and he almost fell to the ground. That's how weak he was. He had cut his sleeping bag and wrapped it around his legs and his feet. So he knew how to survive.
Benestick is now recovering at the Fort Nelson Hospital where he will be reunited with his parents. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're with Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. 8:10 is the time right now. We've got some challenges with slick highways out there in Manitoba today. Highways 15 and 8 specifically. We've been getting calls. Corey's going to have that update for us in just a moment. This half hour on the program, we've got a feature interview. World-renowned author, scientist, and animal behaviorist and autism advocate Temple Grandin is going to join us in studio. She's in Winnipeg. She has some new books out, and we're going to hear more about that. She, of course, has been a game changer in the world, paving the way for so much understanding and changing people's lives who live with autism. So stay tuned for that feature interview with Temple Grandin coming up right here on CBC. First, though, let's go to Heather Wells, who's got the daily news and developments. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba businesses that export goods to the United States are trying to figure out how they will be affected by Donald Trump's proposed 25% tariff on Canadian imports. According to the Manitoba Bureau of Statistics, this province exported $15.5 billion worth of goods to the U.S. last year. The biggest export, medications, $2.3 billion worth in 2023. An expert in online sex predators calls Snapchat the Wild West for kids after a 20-year-old Steinbach man was charged with 2 counts of luring a child. Tyson Vandenbosch was arrested for communicating online with minors for a sexual purpose. Cybertip.ca wants governments to do more to protect children. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby Adeyemi is in with a look at what the weather's going to do today. Hi.
Hi there. We're looking at weather across board, which would look fairly similar with some regional variations. That fog advisory is ended for southwestern Manitoba. However, if you're driving, you might still be sporting some fog here and there that may affect your visibility, though that would lift later this morning. Just be safe on the road. In Winnipeg, -7, light snow falling at the airport at this time. For today, we should see mainly cloudy skies. There's a slight chance of flurries in the forecast. Fog patches will clear up this morning in the city. Light winds will come, and then we get to a high of -6. For tonight, the skies will stay cloudy. We're going to see periods of light snow starting around midnight. Some breezy and cold conditions will come, and then we're deep to -12. But right now, we are at -7.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
And Corey Funk has a look at with more details about the people that have been calling from the road. Corey.
Yeah, slick highways, particularly right around Winnipeg. Highway 15 from Dougal to Winnipeg. Heard from Fred that it's actually very, very slippy right now and misty. Saw a couple cars in the ditch, actually, as well. Highway 8 between Winnipeg and Gimli, also quite slippery. Poor visibility in western Manitoba in general, so be very careful. And actually, I was chatting with Temple Grandin right before we came on air, and she said actually the worst drive she ever had in her whole life was from Winnipeg to Brandon.
Really?
Yep.
Well, we have to put her mic on.
We got to put her on, actually. Here.
At night.
At night.
When?
It was at night. It was about 10 years ago.
Okay.
Driving up to Brandon at night, and when the semis went by, it was total whiteout.
Yeah.
I was in a small rental car. It was just terrifying. And I saw a gas station. I pulled off. I said, I don't care if I spend the night in a gas station. And they had this little tiny hotel, and I got a room in that. I found out the next morning that a little car had been crushed between 2 semis that night. And I had made the right decision to get off that Trans-Canada 1 at night. The snow was blowing across there. And when the trucks went by, you could not see a thing.
Do you know what? I can tell exactly when it was because you were on our show when you were in Winnipeg, and I interviewed you back. It was 12 years ago.
It was
so
12
you were
years ago.
close. Yeah.
Okay.
But you had, and in your whole life, you never experienced anything like that.
It was the
before.
scariest drive I'd ever been on.
It's a stretch that a lot of us who live in the province know well, because it very quickly can get, as you described, like whiteout conditions.
Well, the problem is I could see, but then when a semi went by, it was a complete whiteout. I guess they're high enough up that they can see, but I couldn't see a thing. I was in a small rental car, completely whited out. It was just horrible.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Yeah.
And we're glad you have that warning for this morning. So, yeah.
Yes, and if you want to share what you're seeing out there on the highways, just like we heard from Temple Grandin there, give us a call. Hopefully it's not quite as bad as that. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Well, you actually aren't here to talk about traffic, though you did a great job, I gotta say. You are here because, you've played such a big role in changing the lives of people living with autism spectrum disorder. Your work for years comes from a place, of course, of personal experience, as you've lived with autism yourself for many years. And in your years of work, just for people that don't know how much you've done, you also have done so much work to animal understanding of animal behaviors. Temple Grandin says animals are, quote, visual thinkers, just like her. Her new book, by the way, is called Autism in Adolescence, The Way I See It. Yesterday, Temple Grandin came to Winnipeg to speak at the Leaf at Assiniboine Park. Now, that event was hosted by Autism Manitoba. It was part of their annual fundraising event. And obviously, as you've heard, she's in studio to talk about all of this. How was the event yesterday here?
It was a really, really great event. And I just gave him a lot of practical advice because I've spent 25 years in the construction industry supervising installation of equipment I had designed for the beef industry. In fact, the Cargill plant in High River and the Lakeside plant in Alberta, I designed all the live cattle handling for those plants. And in working in that industry, I worked with a lot of very skilled shop people that were autistic, undiagnosed, owned big metal fabrication shops. And one of the things I'm concerned about is we need these skills. The people I have worked with have retired out, and these factories, and I'm talking about all kinds of factories, just don't have enough people that can do maintenance, because the visual thinkers really good at that because they can see how a machine works. I do a lot of talks to employers, and I have another book called Visual Thinking, The Hidden Gifts of People Who Think in Pictures, Patterns, and Abstractions, that they need these skills. And the visual thinkers like me are the ones that can keep the water systems going, keep the electrical systems going, because they can see how things work.
If someone doesn't understand, Temple, what a visual thinker is, how do you describe it versus another type of thinking?
Well, I thought everybody was a visual thinker until I was in my late 30s. And in my work with cattle, one of the first things I did back when I was in my 20s was to get into the chutes and see what cattle were seeing. And they'd stop at a reflection. They'd stop at water, just little things hanging down. And the first step is you have to realize that thinking is different. Now, the way my memory works, it's like pictures on your phone. Things that interest me, okay, snap, I take a picture. Do I remember the interior of every hotel room? No. Because that's not very high priority. Unless they're really weird or really terrible, they don't get remembered. But you see how things work. And then a verbal thinker, it's in words, thinks in words. And then you have the mathematical thinker, where they think in patterns. Music and math go together.
You've changed so many people's lives. I mean, I mentioned 12 years ago when you came through. I wonder if you look at the last 10 years, like the last decade, what are some of the most positive changes that you've noticed in the autism community?
Well, there's a much better acceptance now. But on the other hand, I want to work on developing skills. Okay, let's go back to the food processing plant.
Okay.
Who builds the food processing plant? I'll tell you right now, I don't care what kind of food processing plant it is. The visual thinkers are the drafting technician, lays out the whole entire factory, and builds and designs and patents all the mechanical devices in there. And then we need our degreed engineer to do the refrigeration. That requires a lot more math. You see, you've got to have both kinds of minds. And in working in industry, also I've done talks out in the tech Silicon Valley industry. Oh, half those programs are on the spectrum.
In terms of where maybe we need to still do work to help with acceptance, you said there's a lot more acceptance and understanding of in the autism community. What is still a challenge? I heard you think that kids getting off screens is important.
Oh, we've got to get them off the screens.
Why?
Because they're not going anywhere. And also, if you want to design video games, that industry is going to get taken over by artificial intelligence. The other thing we've got to work on is making the transition from school to the world of work. We're doing a much better job on the early intervention with the little kids, but I'm seeing teenagers where their parents overprotect them, and they're not learning basic skills like shopping, bank account, just the basic stuff. And then another mistake that was made in the schools is taking out a lot of the hands-on classes, because the people I worked with that were the visual thinkers that I know were autistic, people that are my age, I'm in my 70s now, they took shop classes in school. They grew up working on cars. And then a little tiny shop forms that makes some little tiny thing for a factory. The factory likes them, grows into a great big shop.
It's interesting because tomorrow we're live on location at RRC Polytech. We're looking at the trades. We're looking at the increase in people starting to come back to doing the physical things in the trades and building and learning in those ways. So kind of coincides with what you're talking about.
Well, and we need to be hooking kids young. I'm seeing too many kids today growing up, they've never used a tool. I teach a class at Colorado State University on livestock handling. And one of the things they have to do is to do a scale drawing of a cattle handling facility. I had a girl in my class last year who had never used a ruler to measure anything. Yeah, that's not good. We're getting too many students too far away from the practical world.
Autism acceptance has evolved, obviously, but it can mean something different to people on the spectrum. How important is self-acceptance for people living on the autistic spectrum, in your view?
Well, I don't know. I'm more interested in working on the jobs. See, the people that I worked with, I spent 25 years in construction, and worked with all kinds of people, mathematical engineers, shop people, and the career comes first. Autism is secondary. And the big thing I'm pushing right now is I want to see these autistic kids get into good careers. Another problem we have in autism is they've changed the diagnostic guideline. So you're going all the way from Einstein, who had no language till age 3, to somebody who has very severe disability and cannot dress themselves. It all has the same name. And the verbal thinkers tend to get locked into it, and I'm seeing too many parents getting the mindset that their kid can't do anything.
Got it. What about the mindset of employers? How does that need to change?
Well, there's a few simple accommodations. I basically need an external working memory. So let's say I get a job at Walmart. Let me make a pilot's checklist for the 4 or 5 steps it takes to log into the cash register. Because if somebody just tells me that, I have a hard time remembering. Or let's say you've got certain tasks you want me to do that day. Let me just jot them down in a pilot's checklist format. Because I do not remember very well verbal sequential information. Very, very simple accommodation. Another thing that's a problem for some people with dyslexia, ADHD, autism, head injuries, and migraines is LED lights that flicker. And one of the ways to find that is to take your phone out, photograph the room in regular slow motion, you'll find the bad lights. But there's about 10% of all people where flickering lights are a problem. I talked to a lady recently who had to quit a super good job because she was getting migraines, and I think it was the lighting.
In terms of what you hear from people, I can't imagine. I mean, when people read your own history, there was a time in your life when people said you must have brain damage.
Well, I was 2.5. Okay, you remember, I'm 77 years old.
Yeah.
So a lot of doctors know what autism was. So I went into a neurologist, and they checked me for deafness. You've always got to make sure that the little kid is not deaf. And they checked me for epilepsy. I had very severe autistic symptoms. I had absolutely no speech. It's essential to get little 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds that are not talking into early intervention. The worst thing you can do is wait. I'm hearing horror stories about 2-year wait lists for 3-year-olds. That's absolutely unacceptable.
I was raising sort of your, how at 77 years old, like to come from where you started as a little kid to now, and the impact on people's lives is enormous. What do you hear from people about how you've changed their life when it comes to the acceptance of autism and the understanding?
I've had parents come to me and say, my kid bought a house and got married because of you. My kid went to college because of one of my books. Having been a consultant in construction industry for years, I still am that. I take a very practical approach. How do we actually get things to work? And I find out certain accommodations are really important, like the pilot's checklist format. Instead of just giving sequential verbal yacky, yak, yak, yak. I can't remember that. That's really important.
Do you ever let yourself think that if you hadn't had come to these understandings about yourself and then given that gift of understanding to the world, like we wouldn't have had you?
Well, yeah, a lot of people when I was in high school thought I was just stupid and wouldn't be able to do anything. See, I can't do algebra. I can't do higher math. But you know what I found out working in these factories? These brilliant shop people with maybe 20 patents, they couldn't do algebra either because, you see, I can't remember it. I'm concerned that algebra requirements are going to block out a lot of brilliant machinery designers because you're talking about machinery designers that have 20 patents and not silly patents. Good patents on things the beef industry is still using.
Your understanding of animals, obviously, and your connection with animals is also, something that many have learned from and watched over the many years. What's your sense of how that's evolved?
Well, an animal does not think in words. You see, I think some of the basic thinking on this, some people think you have to have word thinking in order to truly have thought. And animals do not think in words. In fact, a brand new study just came out in 2024, was published in Nature magazine, that words are not required for thought. Yep, that's now, like a lot of philosophers are very verbal, and they think, well, an animal can't really think because they don't have words. No, an animal can think, but they're sensory-based. Their memories are things they've heard, things they've smelled, things they have seen.
What do you still want to do?
Well, I kind of want to encourage the kids that are different, get them out there in good careers. That's what I want to do now. And then just my regular students, they're still teaching at Colorado State University, my regular students, so I want to see them get into good careers they're going to love. I've taken book money and speaking money, and I've used it to put master's and PhD students through school. I have 23 students who've got master's degrees, PhDs with me. I got 3 PhD professors now doing animal behavior research, encouraging the younger generation, helping them to get out and do things, because we need to figure out how to solve problems.
You really are just an incredible person. Every time I've had the privilege to speak with you, it's just I always leave feeling just uplifted, and you do so much work. Did you get a chance to enjoy the city outside of the event yesterday?
Yes, we did. We went to the zoo yesterday. I got to see the polar bears, and I learned something about polar bears.
What'd you learn?
They love romaine lettuce.
Oh,
and I watched them feed them romaine lettuce, and when they ran out of, when they couldn't get romaine lettuce, kale or iceberg lettuce, they wouldn't touch that. But they see this carnivore getting fed big pieces of romaine, and why they love that, and it's a treat, I don't know, but they just have a taste for that. That was something new I learned yesterday.
Well, we're going to take that and we're going to brag about it. Temple Grandin learned something new about animals in Manitoba.
I learned that polar bears like romaine lettuce. They love it.
Really a pleasure to speak with you. Good luck with your upcoming work, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's Temple Grandin, animal husbandry specialist and autism advocate. She spoke at an annual fundraiser for Autism Manitoba yesterday here in Winnipeg.
I know that we shouldn't, but we're probably going to. I know that we shouldn't, but we're probably going to. I know that we shouldn't, but we're probably going to. Know that we shouldn't, but we're probably going to. The context of this photo is so good, although nobody knows, which I guess kind of blows, and I keep being so damn embarrassed and anxious. I'm growing in these arms so tight, so polite, be bright and frightened, let down lightly, oh fortnightly. I know that we shouldn't, but we're probably going to. I know that we shouldn't, but we're probably going to. I know that we shouldn't, but we're probably going to. Know that we shouldn't, but we're probably going to. I will hold my breath so I can hear yours next to mine. Here in the dark on this long car ride home, I am lost in
tune's called Probably Going To, and the artist is Sophie Stevens, if you're looking it up. You're listening to CBC. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, temperature has not budged this morning. Still at -7, headed to a high of just -6. It's going to be colder tomorrow. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will hold a First Ministers meeting today. Trudeau says he spoke with some premiers earlier this week after President-elect Donald Trump announced plans to impose a 25% tariff on all Canadian and Mexican imports unless action is taken to stem the flow of migrants and illegal drugs. Canada's premiers have expressed they want to be part of a, quote, Team Canada approach to everything from trade and secure borders to energy, defense, and cross-border supply chains. Now, Manitoba pork producers worry their industry will effectively have to stop selling to the U.S. if Trump goes ahead with those plans to slap tariffs on all Canadian imports. This province exported $439 million worth of pork and live pigs to the U.S. in 2023. That makes the U.S. Manitoba pork's largest export market. Cam Dahl, who speaks for pork producers, says the tariffs would make Manitoba pork uncompetitive south of the border.
U.S. retailers couldn't afford to put Canadian pork onto their shelves, and the same thing with U.S. farmers that couldn't afford to buy Canadian pigs to finish. It would essentially close that market.
Other major Manitoba exports to the U.S. last year included medication, canola, electricity, frozen vegetables, oil and gas, and agricultural equipment. Now, while many worry these proposed tariffs, there is one Manitoba grain farmer, Landon Friesen, who is not throwing his hands in the air just yet.
I'm feeling optimistic. I think it'll be okay as long as we don't run around with our heads cut off about this and freak out.
Friesen hauls his wheat to North Dakota. He says he is on the 20th of 150 loads he plans to deliver through the winter. The pitfalls of social media are back in the spotlight after a Steinbach man was arrested for communicating online with minors for a sexual purpose. 20-year-old Tyson Vanden Bosch has been charged with 2 counts of luring a child. RCMP investigators say they have also located several victims they haven't been able to yet identify. Stephen Sauer is director at cybertip.ca. He says this is a grim reminder of the many sexually exploitive incidents that happen to young people on social media.
It's happened in the last few years. 74% of the incidents that are sextortion related connect to either Snapchat or Instagram. So those are 2 major social media platforms that do not put enough in the way of protections for youth on their platform.
RCMP have released the Snapchat avatar used by Vanden Bosch, and you can see that on our website this morning. The Union for Winnipeg Transit Drivers wants more community safety officers on buses. They made that demand yesterday at a rally outside City Hall. Violent incidents have dropped since the community safety team made its debut earlier this year, but the union says there aren't enough of them to cover the entire system. Safety team leader Bob Christmas says he has been getting positive feedback from Winnipeg bus drivers and passengers.
Just trying to take the resources we have and make the best impact we can. You know, a big part of the work they do is being present. As you can see, they're highly visible. These are some of my officers are with me here.
Public Works Committee Chair Janice Lukes says she and the mayor agree the safety team is working, but the city can't add more members without first securing more funding. The city of Brandon wants the province to let all Manitoba municipalities use photo radar enforcement. The city of Brandon is at the Association of Manitoba Municipalities conference this week lobbying for these changes. Right now, under the Highway Traffic Act of Manitoba, only Winnipeg can use photo radar. Brandon councillor Bruce Lupke says that needs to change.
You can use it for all these purposes to help curb crime, but you're not going to allow us to use it for traffic safety. And so I think that's one of the things for me is video and photo technology is used in a lot of ways when it comes to enforcement on different things, so why not for traffic enforcement?
Brandon has been lobbying for photo radar since 2021. You can find more on these stories on our website, as well as stay in step with news as it develops throughout the day. cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells, Megan Ketchison, Joni Nicolo. Thanks to our news department. Thanks to our live team here, which is Corey Funk and Abby Adeyemi and Kevin Nipatebo and Travis Peterson, who's pinch hitting late in the show here for us. Let's start with what's happening with a last look at this slippery commute, Corey.
Yeah, there's been a collision at Nairn and Watt. So the northbound median lane is blocked right now. Look out for that. Highways 15, Highways 8, heard from commuters that it's very slippery as well. Poor visibility in western Manitoba on the highways.
Abby?
We're looking at fog lifting this morning for southwestern Manitoba. A light snow across the province. Compared to Winnipeg, most of the regions are kind of experiencing colder temperatures with light snow, with Thompson and Churchill having more significant snow and breezy conditions. Though for Winnipeg and the Red River Valley, it's going to stay mainly cloudy with a chance of flurries and light snow later tonight. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at -7 and we only get to -6 today.
All right, that'll do it. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Tomorrow we're live on location. It's finally our turn. Radio Noon's been there. Our colleagues have been there for Communities in Focus for the last couple of weeks, bringing us stories. We're on location at Red River. That's what I'm talking about. RRC Polytech. So this is part of Communities in Focus. Our CBC team has had office hours there, led by producer Nadia Kidwai. Jim Agapito has been there. Travis Goulby. Tomorrow, as I say, it's our turn. Information Radio Live. So we are going to be at the mall level on the Notre Dame campus, and this is in the library hallway. In case you know RRC Polytech and you want to join us, if you want to come have a coffee, watch the show live, see how it's done, how it's shot for YouTube, or if you want to come and tell us about your experience being a student at RRC Polytech, we would love to get you on the air. So please consider that tomorrow as we're live on location with a special edition of Information Radio on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Take care, be well. The Current is coming up next.